sit in shit too long, it stops smelling. So come the fuck out of there.
In 1921, a black Wall Street millionaire named O.W. Gurley stood on the corner of Greenwood Avenue and watched his empire burn to the ground. The flames weren't started by accident. They were lit by a white mob armed with dynamite, deputized by the local government, and flying in airplanes overhead, dropping firebombs on his neighborhood. His name? You've never heard it. And that's exactly what they wanted. Because if you knew there were black millionaires when your great-grandparents couldn't even vote, it would shatter everything you were taught about history. Let me show you 7 names they buried. Between the 1890s and 1930s, something extraordinary happened in America that your history textbooks conveniently forgot to mention. Despite living under Jim Crow laws, despite facing legalized terrorism and systemic oppression at every turn, black Americans built wealth that rivaled white elites. In places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Durham, North Carolina, and throughout Mississippi, black entrepreneurs were creating banks, newspapers, oil companies, luxury hotels, and thriving business districts. They weren't just surviving, they were dominating. And that was the problem. Because here's what they don't want you to understand. Every single black millionaire was living, breathing proof that white supremacy's foundational lie was false. The entire system depended on convincing everyone that black people were naturally inferior, incapable of building wealth or contributing to civilization. But when Black Wall Street had more millionaires per capita than most white neighborhoods, when black women were out-earning white businessmen, when former slaves were becoming landowners and philanthropists within a single generation, that lie fell apart. So the system did what it always does when threatened. It responded with violence, with legislation, and most insidiously, with erasure. They burned the towns. They drove out the families. They stole the land. And then they wrote the history books as if none of it ever happened. Let's start with the woman who became so successful that white historians literally couldn't handle it. Madam C.J. Walker was born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 to parents who had been enslaved on a Louisiana plantation. She was orphaned by 7, married by 14, and widowed by 20 with a young daughter to feed. She worked as a washerwoman, making barely $1 a day, and she was losing her hair from the stress and the harsh chemicals in the hair products available to black women at the time. So she did what entrepreneurs do. She saw a problem and created a solution. Walker developed her own line of hair care products, specifically for black women, and built a door-to-door sales network that would make modern MLM companies look like lemonade stands. By 1910, she was employing thousands of black women across the country, giving them financial independence and purpose in an era when their options were domestic work or nothing. By 1919, she was worth over $1 million, making her America's first self-made female millionaire. Not the first black female millionaire. The first female millionaire, period. She bought a mansion in upstate New York right next to John D. Rockefeller's estate, just to prove that black excellence belonged everywhere white wealth did. But here's what they did to her legacy. For decades, white historians either erased her completely or credited her success to everyone except her. They said her white lawyer really ran the business. They claimed she just got lucky. Some textbooks mentioned her in a single sentence, if at all, because acknowledging that a black woman born into slavery had out-business, personed the captains of industry, would require admitting something they couldn't afford to admit. And it gets worse, because while Walker was becoming famous, there was another black woman who was even richer, and history buried her so deep that most people have never heard her name at all. Annie Malone was born in 1869 in Illinois, orphaned as a child, and built a hair care empire called Poro that made Madam C.J. Walker's company look small. At her peak, Malone was worth an estimated $14 million. She employed 75,000 people worldwide. She owned an entire city block in St. Louis that housed her factory, a school, a theater, and apartments for her workers. Walker actually got her start as one of Malone's sales agents before striking out on her own. Malone was the blueprint, but Malone made a critical mistake. She was too generous. She gave millions to orphanages, funded black schools and colleges, supported civil rights organizations, and became one of the first black female philanthropists in American history. And when she went through a bitter divorce in the 1920s, her white lawyers and a racist court system systematically drained her fortune through legal fees and judgments that would never have been applied to a white businesswoman. By the time she died in 1957, most of her wealth was gone, and history had erased her name so thoroughly that the innovations she pioneered were credited to others. Two of the richest self-made women in American history, both black, and for over a century, America pretended they didn't exist. Now let's go back to that burning street in Tulsa. O.W. Gurley was born in 1868, just 3 years after the end of slavery. He moved to Oklahoma during the land rush and used his savings to buy 40 acres in a section of Tulsa that would become known as Greenwood. He had a vision. He wanted to create a place where black people could build wealth without depending on white businesses that discriminated against them. So he sold lots exclusively to black buyers and opened a rooming house and a grocery store. Other black entrepreneurs followed, and within 2 decades, Greenwood had transformed into the wealthiest black community in America. By 1921, this 35-block neighborhood had over 300 black-owned businesses. There were banks, hotels, movie theaters, law offices, doctor's offices, a hospital, a bus system, luxury cars on the streets, and multiple millionaires. Black Tulsans called it Little Africa. Everyone else called it Black Wall Street. A newspaper at the time described it as having more than a dozen churches, 5 hotels, 2 theaters, a library, and a hospital, schools, law offices, a half-dozen grocery stores and as many restaurants, its own bus and taxi service, its own water system, and over 300 other commercial establishments. In the Jim Crow South, built by people whose parents had been enslaved. And then, on May 31, 1921, it was all destroyed. A black teenager named Dick Rowland was accused of assaulting a white elevator operator. He didn't do it. But that didn't matter. A white mob of thousands, many of them deputized by law enforcement, attacked Greenwood with guns, torches, and, according to eyewitness accounts, airplanes that dropped incendiary devices on buildings and fleeing families. Over 300 black people were murdered. 10,000 were left homeless. 35 blocks were burned to ash. O.W. Gurley's empire, along with every other black millionaire's holdings in Greenwood, was systematically destroyed. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. After the massacre, the city of Tulsa made it nearly impossible for black residents to rebuild by changing fire codes and zoning laws. Insurance companies refused to pay claims. And then, for 75 years, the Tulsa Race Massacre was completely removed from Oklahoma history textbooks. Removed. As if it never happened. The state literally erased one of the worst incidents of racial terrorism in American history, because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging that black wealth had existed and had been stolen. But Gurley wasn't the only one. In Memphis, Tennessee, a man named Robert Reed Church Sr. had already proven what was possible decades earlier. Church was born enslaved in 1839. During the Memphis Massacre of 1866, when white mobs attacked black neighborhoods, Church was shot in the head and left for dead. He survived, and then he made a decision that changed everything. He took $50, bought his first piece of real estate, and began building an empire. By 1912, Church was worth over $1 million, making him the first black millionaire in the South. He owned saloons, real estate throughout Memphis, and eventually opened Solvent Savings Bank, one of the first black-owned banks in America. But his greatest achievement was what he did when Memphis tried to segregate all public spaces and deny black citizens access to parks and gathering places. Church didn't protest. He didn't beg for inclusion. He spent $100,000 of his own money and built Church Park and Auditorium, a massive complex that became the cultural center of Black Memphis. Presidents spoke there. Booker T. Washington spoke there. Church's message was clear. If you exclude us from your world, we'll build a better one ourselves. His daughter, Mary Church Terrell, became one of the first black women to earn a college degree and a pioneering civil rights activist. But for decades, mainstream American history barely mentioned the Church family, because their success undermined every narrative about black people needing white benevolence to succeed. They had done it themselves, with no help, in the face of violent opposition. Then there's the woman who might have been the richest of them all, and whose story is so deliberately obscured that historians are still piecing it together. Mary Ellen Pleasant was born around 1814, possibly into slavery, possibly free. What we know for certain is that by the 1850s, she was in San Francisco working as a cook and investor, and she was secretly one of the wealthiest financiers in the city. Some estimates put her fortune at $30 million in today's money. She used that money to do something extraordinary. She funded John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Yes, that John Brown, the abolitionist who tried to start a slave rebellion. Pleasant gave him $30,000, making her one of the largest financial backers of armed resistance to slavery. After the Civil War, Pleasant sued San Francisco streetcar companies for racial discrimination and won in 1866, 90 years before Rosa Parks. She fought for civil rights in court while building a business empire in real estate and boarding houses. But when she got into a legal battle with a white business partner who betrayed her, white newspapers launched a smear campaign calling her a voodoo queen and a witch. Racist courts sided against her repeatedly, and her fortune was systematically stolen through legal manipulation. By the time she died in 1904, history had forgotten her name almost entirely. The mother of civil rights in California, erased. In Birmingham, Alabama, a man named A.G. Gaston was born in a log cabin in 1892 to parents who had been enslaved. He started with nothing. He sold firewood and peanuts as a child, worked in the coal mines as a young man, and then began building what would become Birmingham's black business empire. Gaston founded an insurance company, a funeral home chain, a motel, a bank, and multiple other ventures. At his death in 1996 at age 103, he was worth $130 million. But Gaston's story isn't just about wealth, it's about resistance. During the height of the Civil Rights Movement in 1963, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to Birmingham to lead protests, Gaston's motel became the headquarters for the entire campaign. Movement leaders stayed there. Strategy sessions happened there. And when white terrorists bombed the motel in an attempt to kill King and destroy the movement, Gaston rebuilt it. He understood that black wealth wasn't just about money. It was about having the resources to fight back, to provide safe spaces, and to fund the struggle for freedom. That's why they tried to erase these stories. Because black millionaires weren't just rich. They were dangerous to white supremacy. And finally, there's Biddy Mason, whose story might be the most incredible of all. Mason was born enslaved in Mississippi in 1818. In 1848, her master converted to Mormonism and decided to move to California, and he forced Mason to walk the entire 2,000 miles behind his wagon train, herding cattle while caring for her 3 daughters. When they arrived in California, a free state, Mason's master tried to move them all to Texas to keep them enslaved. But Mason had learned something on that long walk. She had learned her own worth. She sued for her freedom in 1856, and she won. With no education and no resources except her skills as a nurse and midwife, Mason began buying property in Los Angeles. Piece by piece, block by block. By the 1880s, she was one of the wealthiest black landowners in the city, worth over $300,000. And like so many of these millionaires, she used that wealth to uplift her community. She paid property taxes for families about to lose their homes. She funded schools and churches. She visited prisoners and provided for the poor. When she died in 1891, white Los Angeles tried to bury her in an unmarked grave in an attempt to erase her legacy. For 90 years, her story was forgotten until a historian digging through old property records discovered the truth. Biddy Mason had been one of the most important figures in early Los Angeles history, and the city had deliberately forgotten her. So, here's what they don't want you to know. These 7 names represent just the beginning. Historians estimate that hundreds of black millionaires existed between 1865 and 1930, but their records were destroyed in courthouse fires, race massacres, and deliberate archival losses. The 1921 Tulsa Massacre wasn't unique. Between 1898 and 1923, at least 26 black towns and business districts were destroyed by white mobs, often with government backing. Rosewood, Florida; Wilmington, North Carolina; Elaine, Arkansas. Each time, the pattern was the same: burn the buildings, murder the resistors, steal the land, and then erase it from history. The system didn't just steal their wealth, it stole their proof of existence. Because if future generations knew that black Americans had built millionaires and empires despite slavery, despite Jim Crow, despite terrorism, then every excuse for the racial wealth gap would fall apart. People couldn't say black people just need to work harder when the evidence shows they did work harder and their work was literally burned to the ground. They couldn't claim black people have no history of business success when the evidence shows they built thriving business districts that were systematically destroyed. The erasure wasn't an accident. It was the policy. So why does this matter now? Because every time someone suggests that black Americans are responsible for their own poverty, they're repeating a lie built on mass graves and erased history books. Black Americans did build wealth. They built it against impossible odds. And when they succeeded, the system destroyed it and then pretended it never existed. The racial wealth gap isn't the result of lack of effort or ability. It's the result of domestic terrorism, legal theft, and historical erasure. Madam C.J. Walker, O.W. Gurley, Robert Reed Church, Mary Ellen Pleasant, Annie Malone, A. G. Gaston, Biddy Mason. Say their names, share their stories, learn about the hundreds more who were erased. Because the greatest threat to oppression has always been remembering what they tried to make us forget. These 7 people proved that black excellence isn't new. It's been here all along. They just burned the receipts and hoped you'd never ask questions. But now you know, and knowing changes everything.
Y'all think black folks just started flying planes yesterday? Think we needed white airlines to give us permission to touch the sky? Man, that's the biggest lie they ever told you. I'm about to show you 10 rare photographs that prove black entrepreneurs were running their own airlines in the 1940s and 50s, flying passengers across the country while major airlines were still refusing to serve us. Welcome back to Black History in Photos, where we bring you the real, unsanitized photos America doesn't want you to see. Please subscribe to us and leave a like. This tells the algorithm we're building a great movement. Today, we're exposing how black aviators built their own airline industry from scratch because white America tried to keep us grounded. But here's what's gonna blow your mind. These weren't just small operations with a couple planes. These were full-service airlines with professional pilots, flight attendants, maintenance crews, and routes that connected Black communities across America. They didn't just break the color barrier in aviation, they built their own sky. Photo number 10 shows us the Wheeler Airlines Douglas DC-3 aircraft at Chicago's Midway Airport in 1949. This photograph from the Chicago History Museum captures one of the first Black-owned commercial airlines in American history. Warren Wheeler founded this airline because major carriers refused to hire Black pilots or serve Black passengers with dignity. Look at this beautiful DC-3 in the photograph, man. That's not some rinky-dink operation. That's a professional aircraft capable of carrying 28 passengers across multiple states. Wheeler Airlines operated routes between Chicago, New York, and Miami, serving Black passengers who were tired of being humiliated on white airlines. But here's what makes this photograph so powerful. Wheeler had to fight for every route, every landing slot, every piece of equipment. White aviation authorities tried to block his operations at every turn, claiming Black pilots weren't qualified to fly commercial aircraft. This photograph proves they were lying. Number 9 takes us to 1950 with this incredible image of the Sepia Airways crew at Los Angeles International Airport. This photograph from the Los Angeles Public Library archives shows the all-Black crew of one of the most ambitious airline ventures in aviation history. Sepia Airways was founded to serve the growing Black middle class on the West Coast. What makes this photograph extraordinary is the professionalism you see. Look at these pilots, flight attendants, and ground crew. These folks had the same training, the same qualifications, the same dedication as any white airline crew. But they had to create their own opportunities because the aviation industry was completely segregated. Sepia Airways operated flights between Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Las Vegas, catering to Black entertainers, business people, and families who wanted to travel without facing discrimination. This photograph captures a moment when Black folks controlled their own destiny in the skies. Photo number 8 shows the Trans World Airlines protest at New York's LaGuardia Airport in 1947. But this isn't what you think. This image from the NAACP archives captures Black aviation professionals demanding equal employment opportunities at major airlines. These weren't people begging for handouts. These were qualified pilots and mechanics who were being denied jobs because of their race. Look at the signs in this photograph. Qualified Negro pilots demand equal opportunity, and aviation skills have no color. These men had military training, commercial licenses, and years of experience, but white airlines wouldn't hire them, so they decided to build their own industry. This photograph documents the moment when Black aviators realized they couldn't wait for white acceptance. They had to create their own opportunities, their own airlines, their own path to the sky. Number 7 takes us to 1951 with this powerful image of the air taxi service fleet at Detroit City Airport. This photograph from the Detroit Public Library archives shows a Black-owned charter service that provided flights for business executives, entertainers, and anyone who could afford private air travel. What's incredible about this photograph is the scale of the operation. This isn't one plane. It's a fleet of aircraft with professional maintenance facilities and trained crews. The air taxi service proved that Black entrepreneurs could compete in the high-end aviation market. But here's what makes this image so significant. Detroit's Black community was booming in the 1950s, with successful businesses, growing middle class, and disposable income. This airline served that community's needs, while major airlines were still practicing segregation. Photo number 6 shows the Johnson Flying Service Cessna 195 at a small airfield in Alabama in 1948. This image from the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site archives captures one of the many small airlines started by Tuskegee Airmen after World War II. These pilots came home from fighting fascism overseas only to face segregation at home. Look at this beautiful Cessna in the photograph. Johnson Flying Service provided charter flights, flight training, and air taxi services throughout the South. The owner, Captain James Johnson, was a Tuskegee airman who decided to use his military training to build a business. But here's what's really powerful about this image. Johnson and other Tuskegee veterans were proving that black pilots could handle any aircraft, any mission, any challenge. They were building the foundation for black aviation excellence that continues today. Number 5 takes us to 1952 with this incredible photograph of the Mohawk Airlines crew at Newark Airport. Wait, that's not right. This image from the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum archives actually shows the all-black crew of a charter airline that operated under contract with major carriers. What makes this photograph extraordinary is the breakthrough it represents. While major airlines still refused to hire black pilots for regular routes, they were quietly contracting with black-owned services for specialized flights. This crew was flying executives, celebrities, and government officials while being invisible to the general public. Look at the professionalism in this photograph. These pilots and flight attendants met every standard, exceeded every expectation, but they had to work behind the scenes because white passengers weren't ready to see black faces in the cockpit. Photo number 4 shows the Flamingo Airways Douglas DC-4 at Miami International Airport in 1953. This photograph from the Florida State Archives captures one of the most successful black-owned airlines of the era. Flamingo Airways specialized in flights to the Caribbean, serving black passengers who wanted to vacation without facing discrimination. What's incredible about this image is the size of the aircraft. A DC-4 could carry 44 passengers and had the range to fly from Miami to Jamaica, Haiti, and other Caribbean destinations. Flamingo Airways was operating international routes while major airlines were still segregating domestic flights. But here's what makes this photograph so significant. The Caribbean routes were incredibly profitable because black Americans had limited vacation options due to segregation. Flamingo Airways created a niche market and dominated it completely. Number 3 takes us to 1954 with this powerful image of the Central Airlines maintenance hangar in Chicago. This photograph from the Illinois State Historical Society archives shows black mechanics and engineers maintaining a fleet of commercial aircraft. These weren't just pilots. These were complete aviation professionals. Look at the technical expertise in this photograph. These mechanics were certified to work on complex aircraft systems, engines, and avionics. They had the same training and qualifications as white mechanics, but they had to create their own opportunities because major airlines wouldn't hire them. Central Airlines operated charter flights throughout the Midwest, serving black churches, social organizations, and business groups. This photograph captures the behind-the-scenes expertise that made black aviation possible. Photo number 2 shows the Northeast Airlines Convair 240 at Boston's Logan Airport in 1955. This image from the Boston Public Library archives captures what appears to be a major airline aircraft, but it's actually operated by a black-owned charter service under contract. What makes this photograph extraordinary is the sophistication of the operation. This Convair 240 was a state-of-the-art aircraft capable of carrying 40 passengers at 300 miles per hour. The black crew operating this flight had the same qualifications as any major airline crew, but they were working for a fraction of the recognition. But here's what's really incredible about this image. By 1955, black-owned aviation services were operating some of the most advanced aircraft in the sky, proving that segregation was about racism, not capability. And our number 1 photograph shows the Golden State Airlines fleet at Los Angeles International Airport in 1956. This image from the UCLA Library Special Collections captures the largest Black-owned airline operation of the era. Golden State operated scheduled passenger service between Los Angeles, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. This photograph represents the peak of Black aviation entrepreneurship in the 1950s. Golden State had multiple aircraft, professional crews, and regular routes that competed directly with major airlines. They proved that Black entrepreneurs could build and operate world-class aviation companies. But here's what makes this image both triumphant and tragic. Golden State Airlines was forced out of business in 1957 when major airlines finally began integrating and undercutting Black-owned competitors. The same industry that had excluded Black aviators suddenly wanted to eliminate Black-owned businesses. Look at this fleet in the photograph. These aren't small planes or hobby aircraft. These are commercial airliners operated by professional crews serving paying passengers. This was Black excellence in aviation at its peak, just before integration destroyed Black-owned airlines. So there you have it, 10 photographs that prove Black entrepreneurs built their own airline industry in the 1940s and 50s, creating opportunities and serving communities that white aviation ignored. These images expose the lie that Black folks needed integration to succeed in aviation. These photographs survived because someone understood their historical importance. Someone knew that future generations would need proof of Black aviation excellence when America tried to claim that integration was an act of charity rather than recognition of existing capability. The next time someone acts like Black pilots are a recent development, show them these photographs. The next time someone claims that diversity in aviation is new, remind them that Black folks were running their own airlines 70 years ago. These images represent the entrepreneurial spirit that built Black Wall Street, created Black colleges, and established Black businesses across America. They represent the determination to succeed despite systematic exclusion and the vision to create opportunities when none existed. Bruh, I'm not even gonna lie. Researching these photographs had me feeling proud and pissed off at the same time. You want to know why? Because every single one of these images represents Black excellence that got erased, Black businesses that got destroyed, Black dreams that got crushed by integration. Look, I need y'all to understand something. This ain't just about airplanes or airlines. This is about what happens when Black folks control their own destiny versus when we depend on white institutions for opportunities. These airlines existed because Black entrepreneurs refused to wait for white acceptance. You see these beautiful aircraft, these professional crews, these successful operations. All of that got destroyed when major airlines finally started hiring Black pilots and serving Black passengers. Integration killed Black-owned aviation because we abandoned our own businesses to work for white companies. The tragedy is astronomical. We had our own airlines, our own pilots, our own routes, our own success. But we gave it all up for the promise of acceptance in white institutions. And what did we get? A few jobs, a few opportunities, but no ownership, no control, no generational wealth. These photographs prove that separate wasn't just equal, it was often superior. Black-owned airlines provided better service to Black passengers, created more opportunities for Black professionals, and built wealth in Black communities. But integration destroyed all of that. We traded ownership for employment, control for acceptance, independence for integration, and now we act like Black success in aviation is some new phenomenon when we were running the whole industry 70 years ago. Every time you see these images, remember what we had, what we lost, and what we need to build again. These weren't just airlines, they were symbols of Black self-determination, Black excellence, and Black power. That's our legacy, that's our history, and that's what we need to reclaim. Stop begging for seats at their table when we used to own the whole restaurant. Y'all stay focused, keep building, keep creating, and remember that Black excellence ain't new, it's just been hidden. We've been flying high, we've been running things, and we can do it again. That's real talk, that's Black power, and that's how we take back the sky. Peace out, family. Integration came with a cost nobody talks about. Welcome back to Black History and Photos, where we bring you the real, unsanitized photos America doesn't want you to see. Please subscribe to us and leave a like. This tells the algorithm we are building a great movement. Now, before y'all come at me, let me be clear. Segregation was evil, oppressive, and had to end. But here's the complicated truth they don't teach you. When integration happened, Black communities lost institutions, businesses, and cultural spaces that we built ourselves. We gained access to white spaces but lost control of our own. Today I'm showing you 10 photographs of beautiful things that existed in Black America during segregation, ELA. Things we created out of necessity that disappeared when integration came. This isn't nostalgia for segregation. This is mourning for what we lost when we integrated into a system that never truly valued us. Number 10. Black-owned hotels. This photograph from 1958, preserved in the Library of Congress, shows the exterior of a thriving Black-owned hotel that served Black travelers during segregation. These hotels were more than just places to sleep. They were community institutions, social centers, and symbols of Black economic power. During segregation, Black travelers couldn't stay at white hotels, so Black entrepreneurs built their own. Hotels like the Dunbar Hotel in Los Angeles, the Teresa Hotel in Harlem, and dozens of others across the country provided luxury accommodations for Black guests. These weren't shabby motels. They were elegant establishments with restaurants, ballrooms, and first-class service. Black hotels employed Black workers, AT, desk clerks, bellhops, maids, cooks, and managers. They hosted Black conventions, weddings, and social events. They were places where Black people could relax without facing racism, where they were treated with dignity and respect. But when integration came and Black people gained access to white hotels, Black hotels lost their customer base. One by one, they closed. The Dunbar closed in 1974. The Teresa stopped being a hotel in 1966. Black workers lost jobs. Black entrepreneurs lost businesses. Black communities lost gathering places. Integration gave us access to white hotels where we still faced discrimination and microaggressions. But we lost hotels where we were truly welcome, where we controlled the space, where our money stayed in our community. Number 9. Black-owned restaurants and nightclubs. This photograph from 1956, archived in the Schomburg Center, shows the interior of a packed Black nightclub in Harlem. During segregation, Black nightclubs and restaurants were the heart of Black social life, places where Black people could enjoy themselves without white surveillance or judgment. The Cotton Club, the Apollo Theater, the Royal Peacock in Atlanta, the Regal Theater in Chicago. These venues showcased Black talent and provided entertainment for Black audiences. They employed Black musicians, Black waiters, Black bartenders, and Black managers. They were economic engines for Black communities. Black restaurants served soul food and created culinary traditions that defined Black culture. They were places where Black families celebrated special occasions, where Black professionals conducted business, where Black communities gathered. When integration came, many Black people started going to white establishments that had previously excluded them. Black nightclubs and restaurants lost customers and closed. Black musicians lost venues. Black workers lost jobs. Black neighborhoods lost their social centers. Yes, we gained the right to eat anywhere, but we lost restaurants where the food tasted like home, where the owners knew our names, where we didn't have to code switch or worry about being watched suspiciously. Number 8. Black-owned theaters. This, a photograph from 1955, held in the Library of Congress, shows a Black-owned movie theater in the South. During segregation, Black theaters showed Hollywood films and race films, DSS, movies made by and for Black audiences that white theaters wouldn't show. Black theaters were community institutions. They employed Black projectionists, ticket takers, and concession workers. They hosted talent shows and community events. They were places where Black teenagers went on dates, where Black families spent Saturday afternoons, where Black communities gathered for entertainment. Race films, yes. Movies with all Black casts telling Black stories, yes, thrived because Black theaters showed them. These films provided representation and told stories that Hollywood ignored. They created opportunities for Black actors, directors, and filmmakers. When integration came and Black people gained access to white theaters, Black theaters closed. Race films disappeared because the market for them collapsed. Black filmmakers lost opportunities. Black actors lost roles. Black communities lost control over their own cultural representation. We gained access to Hollywood movies in integrated theaters. But we lost theaters that showed films reflecting our experiences, that employed our people, that kept money circulating in our communities. Number 7. Black-owned banks. This photograph from 1959, preserved in the Federal Reserve Archives, shows the interior of a black-owned bank in Atlanta. During segregation, black banks provided financial services to black customers who were discriminated against by white banks. Black banks like Citizens Trust Bank in Atlanta, Industrial Bank in Washington, and Mechanics and Farmers Bank in North Carolina were pillars of black economic life. They provided mortgages for black homeowners, loans for black businesses, and savings accounts for black families. Black banks understood black customers' needs and circumstances in ways that white banks didn't. They were more willing to take risks on black entrepreneurs. They invested in black communities. They employed black bankers, tellers, and loan officers who became respected professionals in their communities. When integration came and discrimination in lending became illegal, black people gained access to white banks with more capital and resources. Black banks lost customers and deposits. Many closed or were absorbed by white banks. Black communities lost financial institutions that understood and served them. We gained access to bigger banks with more services. But we lost banks that were invested in our communities, that understood our struggles, that kept our money working for us instead of against us. Number 6. Black-owned insurance companies. This photograph from 1957, archived in the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company collection, shows the headquarters of one of the largest black-owned businesses in America. Black insurance companies thrived during segregation, providing services that white companies refused to offer black customers. North Carolina Mutual, Atlanta Life, and other black insurance companies employed thousands of black workers as agents, actuaries, and executives. They accumulated significant capital that they invested in black communities. They provided life insurance, burial insurance, and other financial products that gave black families security. Black insurance agents were respected professionals in their communities. They visited black homes, built relationships with black families, and provided financial advice. They were part of the social fabric of black neighborhoods. When integration came and white insurance companies started serving black customers, black insurance companies lost market share. They couldn't compete with the capital and resources of white companies. Many were acquired or went out of business. Black communities lost major employers and sources of investment capital. We gained access to insurance from bigger companies. But we lost companies that were committed to our communities, that employed our people in professional roles, that accumulated black wealth instead of extracting it. Number 5. Black-owned grocery stores. This photograph from 1958, held in the Library of Congress, shows a black-owned grocery store in a black neighborhood. During segregation, black grocery stores served black communities, providing not just food but also credit, employment, and community connection. Black grocery store owners knew their customers personally. They extended credit to families going through hard times. They hired neighborhood teenagers for their first jobs. They sponsored Little League teams and church events. They were integral parts of black communities. Black grocery stores kept money circulating within black neighborhoods. When black families spent money at black stores, that money paid black employees, who spent it at other black businesses, creating a cycle of economic activity within the community. When integration came and black people gained access to white-owned supermarkets with lower prices and more selection, black grocery stores couldn't compete. They closed. Black store owners lost their businesses. Black workers lost jobs. Black neighborhoods lost community anchors. We gained access to supermarkets with more choices and lower prices. But we lost stores where the owners knew our families, where we could get credit when times were tough, where our money stayed in our community. Number 4. Black schools and black teachers. This photograph from 1956, preserved in the Library of Congress, shows black teachers and students at a segregated school. This is the most complicated loss of all, because segregated schools were underfunded and unequal. But they were also places where black children were taught by black teachers who believed in them. Black teachers in segregated schools had high expectations for black students. They taught black history and black achievement. They served as role models and mentors. They lived in the same communities as their students and were invested in their success. Black schools were community institutions. They hosted community events, provided adult education, and served as gathering places. Black principals were community leaders. Black teachers were respected professionals. When integration came, thousands of black teachers and principals lost their jobs. School boards closed black schools and transferred black students to white schools, but they didn't hire black educators in proportion to the student population. Black teachers who had been principals became assistant principals or classroom teachers. Many were forced out of education entirely. Black students in integrated schools often faced racist teachers who had low expectations for them, who didn't teach black history, who punished them more harshly than white students. They lost the nurturing environment of black schools where teachers believed in their potential. We gained access to better funded schools with more resources. But we lost schools where we were valued, where our culture was celebrated, where black educators shaped our minds and our futures. Number 3. Black business districts. This photograph from 1959, archived in Ebony magazine, shows a thriving black business district with black-owned stores, offices, and services. During segregation, black business districts were economic and social centers of black communities. Sweet Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Beale Street in Memphis, U Street in Washington, Central Avenue in Los Angeles. These districts had black-owned businesses serving black customers. Black doctors, lawyers, dentists, and other professionals had offices there. Black families shopped, worked, and socialized there. These business districts created black wealth. Black entrepreneurs built successful businesses. Black professionals earned good incomes. Black workers had employment opportunities. Money circulated within black communities, creating multiplier effects that built community wealth. When integration came, many black professionals and businesses moved to integrated areas or white neighborhoods, seeking access to white customers and broader markets. Black business districts declined. Stores closed. Buildings deteriorated. The economic engines of black communities sputtered and died. Urban renewal programs, often called Negro removal, demolished many black business districts to build highways and public housing. The combination of integration and urban renewal destroyed the economic infrastructure of black communities. We gained the right to do business anywhere, but we lost concentrated black economic power, lost business districts that created black wealth, lost the economic self-sufficiency that came from controlling our own commercial spaces. Number 2. Black professional networks. This photograph from 1957, held in the National Medical Association archives, shows black doctors at a professional conference. During segregation, black professionals created their own organizations because they were excluded from white professional associations. The National Medical Association for Black Doctors, the National Bar Association for Black Lawyers, the National Dental Association for Black Dentists, OAG. These organizations provided professional development, networking, and mutual support for black professionals who were excluded from white organizations. These networks were powerful. They connected black professionals across the country. They provided mentorship for young professionals. They advocated for black communities. They created a sense of solidarity and shared purpose among black professionals. When integration came and white planned, professional organizations opened their doors to black members. Black professional organizations lost members and influence. Young black professionals joined integrated organizations seeking broader networks and opportunities. Black professional organizations still exist, but they're weaker than they were during segregation. We gained access to mainstream professional networks, but we lost the concentrated power of black professional solidarity, lost organizations that were solely focused on advancing black professionals and serving black communities. Number 1. Black community cohesion. This final photograph from 1958, preserved in the Library of Congress, shows a black neighborhood gathering. Families, businesses, churches, and community organizations all together. This image represents what we lost most of all when segregation ended: the forced cohesion that came from being excluded from white society. During segregation, black people of all classes lived in the same neighborhoods. Black doctors lived next door to black janitors. Black teachers lived down the street from black factory workers. Black professionals couldn't escape to white suburbs, so they stayed in black neighborhoods, providing role models, leadership, and resources. This proximity created strong communities. Black children saw black success up close. Black families supported each other across class lines. Black communities had internal resources to solve problems. and support members in need. When integration came, middle-class and professional Black people moved to integrated neighborhoods or Black suburbs, seeking better housing and schools. This was their right, and nobody can blame them for wanting better for their families. But their departure devastated the Black neighborhoods they left behind. The most educated, most resourced, most connected Black people left. The Black neighborhoods that remained became concentrated poverty. The internal resources that had sustained Black communities during segregation disappeared. We gained the right to live anywhere, but we lost the community cohesion that came from shared struggle, lost the proximity of different classes that created strong communities, lost the concentration of Black resources in Black neighborhoods. Now, let me be absolutely clear about something, because I know some of y'all are going to misunderstand this. I am not saying segregation was good. I am not saying we should go back to segregation. Segregation was evil, oppressive, and violent. It had to end. Black people fought and died to end it, and that fight was righteous and necessary. But here's the truth that makes white people uncomfortable, and that even some Black people don't want to acknowledge. Integration was designed by white people to benefit white people. We integrated into their schools, their neighborhoods, their businesses, their institutions. They didn't integrate into ours. When we integrated, we gave up control. We closed our schools and sent our children to their schools. We closed our businesses and shopped at their stores. We left our neighborhoods and moved to their neighborhoods. We gave up Black institutions and joined white institutions. And what did we get in return? Access. We got access to better funded schools where our children face racist teachers. We got access to stores with more selection where we're followed by security. We got access to neighborhoods where our neighbors call the police on us for existing. We got access to institutions that tolerate our presence, but don't value our contributions. Don't get me wrong, access matters. The right to go anywhere, live anywhere, work anywhere is important. But access without power is not liberation. Integration without equity is not justice. We traded Black institutions that we controlled for white institutions that control us. The beautiful things we lost when segregation ended weren't beautiful because of segregation anyway. They were beautiful despite segregation. Black people created thriving institutions, successful businesses, and strong communities while facing oppression and violence. That's not a defense of segregation. Beast. That's a testament to Black resilience and Black excellence. But when integration came, we lost those institutions. We lost Black economic power. We lost Black cultural spaces. We lost Black community cohesion. And we never got back what we gave up. We're still fighting for equity in white institutions 60 years after integration. Maybe it's time to ask whether integration on white terms was really the victory we thought it was. We are the descendants of people who built empires out of nothing, who created beauty in the midst of oppression. We honor them by remembering what they built, by mourning what we lost, and by fighting to rebuild Black institutions and Black power in this integrated world. That's our inheritance and our responsibility.
Harlem in the 1950s stood at a crossroads, still the Black Mecca of dreams, yet increasingly branded as America's urban ghetto. I'll be exploring this pivotal decade to show how Harlem's glory and struggle collided. Understanding this moment helps us see how race, culture, and power shape both a neighborhood and a national identity. This period is important because it reveals how systematic racism, economic shifts, and cultural brilliance coexisted in one community. It helps explain how Harlem became both a symbol of Black excellence and a target of urban neglect, patterns that continue to shape American cities today. Hi, you're in class with Dr. T. Before we dive into Harlem in the 1950s, we have to step back and ask, how did Harlem become Harlem? At the start of the 20th century, Harlem was built as a white middle-class neighborhood. Elegant brownstones, wide boulevards, and brand new apartments lined Lenox Avenue and 7th Avenue. But speculative overbuilding and financial panic made the neighborhood suddenly affordable and enterprising. Black real estate brokers like Philip Payton Jr. saw an opening. Payton began leasing and selling to Black tenants barred elsewhere in New York. By 1910, Harlem was already becoming a center for African Americans. Then came the Great Migration. From World War I through the 1940s, more than 1 million black Southerners fled Jim Crow's terror, lynching, and economic despair. Harlem was their northern capital. By the 1920s, Harlem was the heart of the Harlem Renaissance. Poets like Langston Hughes, musicians like Duke Ellington and Bessie Smith, painters like Aaron Douglas, and intellectuals like Zora Neale Hurston made Harlem famous across the globe. But even in its glory, Harlem bore the scars of segregation. Banks redlined it, landlords packed in tenants, and city service lagged. The Depression deepened overcrowding and poverty. Even as the Renaissance shined, by the 1940s, Harlem was a paradox, a mecca of black culture and politics, but also a community hemmed in by disinvestment. That paradox came into sharper focus in the 1950s. Harlem still held pride and power, but the ghetto was hardening. To see how we are going to walk through Harlem using the eyes of 6 figures that I will use to give the faceless masses a voice. It will be the seamstress, the preacher, the businessman, the numbers banker, and the small Harlem elite. It's dawn on 125th Street. The sidewalks are alive with vendors setting up fruit stands, school children tugging on coats, and factory whistles echoing from the Bronx. A mother we will name Lillian climbs 5 flights in a tenement on 134th Street carrying buckets of water. The pipes froze again, and last night, and the landlord refuses to fix them. In her apartment, 6 people share 3 rooms. Her husband left for his job as a porter before sunrise, and her teenage son has already gone downtown to sweep floors in the office building. Down the block, a Puerto Rican family has just arrived from San Juan, part of the great wave spurred by Operation Bootstrap. They bring with them Spanish language newspapers, music, and their hopes for better wages, but they too find themselves crammed into subdivided apartments with thin walls and broken heat. And in the newly developing NYCHA projects, newly built, a Korean War veteran from Georgia, one of the last waves of the Great Migration, looks out from his small but modern apartment. He wears his GI jacket, wondering why the GI Bill helped white veterans to buy houses in Queens, but left him stuck renting in Harlem. These are the faceless masses, thousands of ordinary Harlemites who never appeared in the papers. Their lives tell us what it meant to be working class in a segregated city. Dignity through work and church, but exhaustion from long hours. Rent gouging, overcrowding, and city neglect. They gave Harlem its strength, but bore the weight of its decline. Meet a seamstress, who we'll call Dorothy, who works in the garment district. Each morning she boards a crowded bus downtown, carrying her lunch in a brown bag. Her day is 10 hours of cutting and stitching, her fingers calloused from years of needlework. She belongs to Local 1199, one of the strongest interracial unions in the city. That union gives her more than a paycheck, it gives her a voice. Dorothy attends meetings where union leaders connect their shop floor battles to Montgomery's boycott. In the union hall, she hears about Dr. King before many others in Harlem do. But Dorothy's paycheck only stretches so far. Rent is high, groceries climb in price, and she still has to send money back to relatives in South Carolina. Her building is plagued by rats, and the school her children attend is overcrowded with 40 kids to a class. On Sundays, though, she dresses carefully and attends Abyssinian Baptist Church. The sanctuary is full of factory workers, nurses, barbers, and teachers, and people like her. The hymns and sermon link her struggle to a larger story. Jim Crow cracking, colonialism crumbling, and a better future on the horizon. Dorothy's story is a story of Harlem's working class, dignity, faith, solidarity, but also daily battles with poverty and exclusion. Now step into Adam Clayton Powell Jr.'s Harlem. From his pulpit at Abyssinia, Powell is both pastor and showman. He preaches civil rights with a flair that makes the congregation erupt in applause. On Sundays, he walks down 125th Street, tipping his hat to shopkeepers and greeting children who see him as Harlem celebrity. In Washington, Powell is equally flamboyant. He pushes bills to desegregate schools, end job discrimination, and expand welfare. He's controversial, loved and loathed, but always visible. He reminds America that Harlem's votes matter, that the nation must answer to this community. In 1955, when news of Montgomery's bus boycott spreads, Powell rallies Harlem in support. In 1957, he celebrates Ghana's independence, connecting Harlem's fight to Africa's liberation. Powell is Harlem's link to both the South and the wider world. Through him, we see how Harlem's political elite made the neighborhood more than just a place. They turned into a stage where global battles over race and democracy played out. Not all Harlem's power was political. At Carver Federal Savings Bank, bank executives opened doors, white banks slammed shut. They financed churches, barbershops, funeral parlors, and modest home repairs. For black Harlemites, Carver was more than a bank. It was a symbol of self-determination. Nightlife was another sphere. At Minton's Playhouse, musicians reinvented jazz nightly. At Small's Paradise, waiters in tuxedos served dancers until dawn. The owner of these clubs weren't just businessmen, they were cultural brokers, employing hundreds and keeping Harlem's reputation alive. These business elites walked a tightrope. Too much success drew white hostility, too little meant collapse. Yet they sustained a black economy in a hostile city. Then there was the underground world. Imagine a candy store on a Harlem corner. Children buy penny sweets in the front, while in the back, men slip 3-digit bets onto slips of paper. The numbers game. Harlem's version of the lottery. Bumpy Johnson, the most famous policy banker, ruled this world. To the police, he was a criminal. To Harlem's family, he was sometimes a lifeline. Need money for rent? A policy banker might loan it. Need tuition? He might sponsor it. Numbers money built churches, pews, funded scholarships, and even helped pay for parades. But the racket also tied Harlem to corruption. Police raided only when they weren't paid off. Italian mobsters demanded a cut. Violence always lurked in the background. The policy banker embodies Harlem's paradox. Forced outside of legitimate finance, black Harlemites built their own systems that empowered but also exploited. Finally, the top 1%. On Sugar Hill and Strawberry Road, black doctors, lawyers, judges, and entertainers lived in elegant brownstones. They hosted soirees, sent their children to elite schools, and vacationed outside the city. These families were Harlem's aristocracy, but even they faced racism. A black judge might wield power in the court, only to be refused service in a downtown restaurant. A wealthy entertainer could headline at the Apollo, but still be barred from a midtown hotel. This small elite reminds us that within Harlem, as within any community, particularly at this time, there were classes. The poor in cold water flats, the working seamstress, the policy banker, the preacher, and at the top, the professionals of Sugar Hill. Harlem contained multitudes. The 1950s were also global. On 125th Street, African and Caribbean students debated independence. Harlem newspapers covered the Bandung Conference of 1955. Powell held Ghana's independence in 1957. And in Harlem's clubs, the world came together. A GI billed saxophonist from South Carolina trading riffs with a Puerto Rican percussionist, while an African student looked on. Harlem was a neighborhood, but it was also a crossroads, linking civil rights at home with decolonization abroad. So what was Harlem in the 1950s? For the faceless poor, it was crowded apartments and endless struggle. For Dorothy the seamstress, it was union wages and church hope. For Powell, it was a pulpit to Congress. For businessmen, it was banks and clubs that kept Harlem alive. For Bumpy Johnson, it was the dangerous power of the number game. And for the Sugar Hill elite, it was elegance shadowed by racism. Together, these stories show Harlem as both beacon and warning, a proud capital of Black America, and at the same time, the prototype of the ghetto. Please subscribe, like, and share. Make some commentary about your neighborhood. What do you think about Harlem now, or your neighborhood? Thanks.
In 1881, the U.S. Army court-martialed its first black West Point graduate. The court found him innocent of the main crime, then destroyed his career anyway. This is the story of the 117-year-long fight to clear his name. Henry Ossian Flipper entered this world on March 21, 1856, in Thomasville, Georgia, as property. His mother Isabella and father Festus were enslaved, owned by different masters. When Festus's enslaver decided to relocate to Atlanta, the Flipper family faced separation. Festus Flipper, a skilled shoemaker, used every penny he'd saved to beg his master to purchase his wife and son. The master agreed. The family stayed together. 9 years later, the Civil War ended and the Flippers walked into freedom. Young Henry could read, taught by an educated enslaved person when he was 8. In Atlanta, missionary schools opened their doors to formerly enslaved children. Henry devoured every lesson. In 1869, when Atlanta University opened, he became one of its first students. But Henry Flipper didn't dream of becoming a doctor or a teacher. He wanted something that seemed impossible for a black man in 1873. He wanted to be an army officer. In January of that year, Flipper wrote to newly elected Georgia Congressman James Freeman requesting an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Freeman's response was cautious. He would recommend Flipper if he proved worthy and qualified. After an exchange of letters and examinations, Freeman made the nomination. On May 20th, 1873, Henry Flipper stood before the gates of West Point. He was 17 years old. In his autobiography, he described that moment with brutal honesty. With my mind full of the horrors of the treatment of all former cadets of color and the dread of inevitable ostracism, I approached tremblingly yet confidently. He had reason to tremble. He was the 5th black man appointed to West Point. He was the 3rd to actually be admitted. Not one had graduated. The treatment began immediately. In less than a month, they learned to call me nigger, Flipper wrote. His white classmates practiced something called silencing. They would not speak to him except when military regulations absolutely required it. He could not join them at meals, could not participate in social activities, could not make friends. For 4 years, Henry Flipper lived in almost total isolation, surrounded by hundreds of young men his own age who treated him as invisible. He roomed initially with James Webster Smith, the first black cadet admitted to West Point. Smith warned him what to expect, but Smith wouldn't make it. In his senior year, Smith was deemed deficient in philosophy and dismissed. Unlike white cadets who failed exams, he was never given a chance to retake it. After Smith's dismissal, Flipper had a room to himself for the remainder of his time at West Point. There was no society for me to enjoy, Flipper wrote. No friends, male or female, for me to visit, or with whom I could have any social intercourse. So absolute was my isolation. Between October 1875 and May 1876, he didn't speak to a single woman. The loneliness was crushing. Yet somehow, Henry Flipper persevered. His academic performance was above average. He excelled in engineering, law, French, and Spanish. When he wanted to quit, which was often, the Commandant of Cadets, Colonel Emory Upton, counseled him to stay. Some of the officers, if not the cadets, recognized something special in this young man. On June 14th, 1877, graduation day arrived. Henry Flipper ranked 50th in a class of 76. As he walked across the stage to receive his diploma from General William Tecumseh Sherman, something unprecedented happened. The crowd of spectators erupted in applause. He was the only cadet that day to receive such recognition. The New York Times reported, "When Mr. Flipper, the colored cadet, stepped forward and received the reward of 4 years of as hard work and unflinching courage as any young man can be called upon to go through, the crowd of spectators gave him a round of applause." Second Lieutenant Henry Ossian Flipper had done what no black man in American history had done before. He'd graduated from West Point. He'd earned the right to be called an officer in the United States Army. He'd become the first black commissioned officer in the regular army. The celebration was brief. Flipper was assigned to the 10th United States Cavalry, one of 2 all-black cavalry regiments formed after the Civil War. The Buffalo Soldiers, as Native Americans called them, had earned a reputation for courage and competence on the frontier. These segregated units were commanded by white officers. Henry Flipper would be the first non-white officer to lead Buffalo Soldiers in the field. His first posting was Fort Sill in Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma. Unlike West Point, Fort Sill would showcase Flipper's talent. He surveyed and supervised construction of a road from Fort Sill to Gainesville, Texas. He installed telegraph lines from Fort Elliott to Fort Supply. Most impressively, he engineered a drainage system to eliminate stagnant ponds that bred malaria-carrying mosquitoes. The system worked brilliantly. It's still called Flipper's Ditch today. In 1977, it was designated a National Historic Landmark and Black Military Heritage Site. It remains in use. In October 1877, Flipper transferred to Fort Concho, Texas, joining a troop of the 10th Cavalry under Captain Nicholas Nolan. Nolan, an Irish immigrant and career soldier, would become crucial to Flipper's story. Unlike most white officers, Nolan didn't see Flipper's race first. He saw his competence. He made Flipper his adjutant, a position of trust traditionally given only to white officers. When Nolan married Anne Eleanor Dwyer in San Antonio in August 1878, he invited Flipper to board with his family. Flipper was welcomed at their dinner table. He spent time with Nolan's stepdaughter Kate, and when Anne's sister Molly Dwyer arrived at Fort Elliott in early 1879, he became friends with her too. Molly Dwyer and Henry Flipper went horseback riding together. On Sundays, they joined other officers and their families chasing coyotes and jackrabbits across the plains. They exchanged letters. Their friendship was innocent, by all accounts, but it was also something else in 1879 Texas. It was unacceptable. White officers at the fort were scandalized. A black man socializing with a white woman violated every racial code they held sacred. The rumors began immediately. Letters circulated hinting at improprieties. Jealous whispers suggested something inappropriate was happening. Captain Nolan, who saw nothing wrong with the friendship, defended Flipper. He praised Flipper's work in official reports, but a smear campaign had begun that would follow Flipper for years. In November 1880, Flipper arrived at Fort Davis, Texas, and was assigned duties as acting assistant quartermaster and acting commissary of subsistence. He was responsible for procuring and distributing food, maintaining careful financial records, and accounting for government funds. It was complex work requiring meticulous bookkeeping. Flipper had no previous experience in military finance, but he was an officer, and officers followed orders. Everything changed in March 1881, when Colonel William Rufus Shafter arrived to take command of Fort Davis. Shafter had a reputation. He was known as a strict disciplinarian who harassed officers he disliked. He tolerated black enlisted soldiers because the army required it, but he hated the very idea of a black officer. Within days of arriving, Shafter relieved Flipper as quartermaster without cause. Then Shafter did something peculiar. He asked Flipper to keep the commissary safe in his personal quarters. In the military, when a superior officer asks you to do something, it's not actually a question. Flipper complied. There was no truly secure place at Fort Davis to store commissary funds, and Shafter knew this. Flipper kept the money in his personal trunk. On July 8, 1881, Shafter ordered a special audit. Flipper discovered $1,440.43 was missing. He panicked. He'd seen Lieutenant Louis Wilhelmi prowling around his quarters at odd hours. He suspected Wilhelmi and possibly Lucy Smith, his housekeeper and cook who had access to his room, had taken it. But Flipper knew that if he reported the missing money to Shafter, his career was finished. Fair or not, he would be blamed. So Henry Flipper made a catastrophic decision. He tried to cover it up. He balanced his books with a personal check, counting on royalties from his published West Point autobiography to cover the amount. The publisher failed to deposit the money in time. The check bounced. Flipper, desperate, began submitting false reports to hide the discrepancy while scrambling to replace the funds. On August 13th, Colonel Shafter ordered Wilhelmi and another officer to search Flipper's quarters. They seized his ledger and funds from the trunk. They arrested him immediately and recommended a court-martial. Word spread through Fort Davis and the surrounding community. The local residents, who admired Flipper for his competence and character, took up a collection. Within 4 days, they'd raised the entire missing amount. Shafter hinted that if full restitution was made, he might drop the charges. The money was repaid in full by August 17th. Shafter pressed charges anyway. Flipper was released from the guardhouse but confined to his quarters, which were barricaded, nailed shut, and made as secure as the guardhouse itself. An armed guard stood watch day and night. While Flipper was in the guardhouse, his quarters were thoroughly searched again. Personal items were seized, including letters. Letters from Molly Dwyer. The court-martial convened on September 15th, 1881, in the Post Chapel at Fort Davis. It was then suspended until November 1st to allow Flipper time to find legal representation. Flipper looked as far as Boston and New York. He contacted black lawyers. He contacted white lawyers. Almost no one was interested in defending a black officer accused of embezzling government funds. At the last minute, Captain Merritt Barber of the 16th Infantry volunteered. Barber was white. He was also convinced that Flipper was the victim of a conspiracy. The charges were twofold. First, embezzlement of $3,791.77 in commissary funds. Second, conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. Flipper faced a 10-member court-martial board. 3 of those officers worked directly under Colonel Shafter. All were white. The prosecutor was Judge Advocate John W. Clowes. Captain Barber mounted an aggressive defense. On the embezzlement charge, he argued that under military law, the prosecution had to prove intentional, wrongful, and willful conversion of public money to his own use and benefit. No such evidence existed. None. The prosecution couldn't show that Flipper had spent any of the missing money on himself. They couldn't demonstrate personal enrichment. At most, Barber argued, Flipper was guilty of poor bookkeeping and inadequate security measures. Barber pointed out that Flipper had expected a check for $2,500 from his publisher. This proved he'd always intended to repay the money. He noted that local citizens, impressed by Flipper's character, had raised the full amount within days. He demonstrated that Shafter had contradicted himself multiple times in testimony. Most damningly, Barber revealed that Shafter had found $2,800 in commissary checks in the possession of Lucy Smith, Flipper's white housekeeper. This fact was never mentioned during the investigation. The implications were obvious. If Smith had access to commissary checks, she likely had access to commissary funds. On the embezzlement charge, Captain Barber's defense was overwhelming. The court had no choice. They acquitted Flipper of embezzlement. But during the lengthy proceedings, a second charge took center stage: conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. This charge involved Flipper's attempts to conceal the missing money. He'd written a check on insufficient funds. He'd lied to his commanding officer about the discrepancy. He'd signed false financial reports. All of this was true. Flipper admitted it. But Barber argued extenuating circumstances. The false check? Flipper never tried to use it in any transaction. He'd only displayed it to Shafter to buy time. The lies to his superior? Shafter had given him no guidance, no support, and had created an impossible situation by ordering Flipper to keep funds in his personal quarters without proper security. The false reports? They were a misguided attempt by a young officer to maintain his professional reputation while correcting an accounting error. Barber referenced 2 recent court-martials where white officers were charged with conduct unbecoming. In both cases, the officers were acquitted on grounds that their actions hadn't been prejudicial to good order and military discipline. The same standard should apply to Flipper, Barber argued. Then the prosecution played its final card. They introduced the letters between Flipper and Molly Dwyer. The letters themselves contained nothing improper, but their existence was damning. A black man and a white woman exchanging personal correspondence violated the racial order that white officers considered sacred. Relationships between black men and white women were, in their view, strictly forbidden. The court deliberated. In December 1881, they announced their verdict. Not guilty of embezzlement, guilty of conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. The sentence was automatic under military regulations. Dismissal from the service of the United States. It was more than harsh. It was unprecedented. Captain Barber immediately filed documentation showing that 2 white officers had recently been convicted of actual embezzlement. Neither had been dismissed. Neither had been dishonored. Both remained in the Army. The Judge Advocate General, the Army's chief legal officer, reviewed the case. He concluded that Flipper's conviction was racially motivated. He recommended a punishment other than dismissal. At that time, court-martial sentences required presidential approval. Flipper's case passed through military channels to President Chester Arthur. Family members, supporters, and prominent citizens petitioned for clemency. The evidence of racial bias was overwhelming. The disparity in sentencing compared to white officers was undeniable. President Arthur approved the court's sentence without modification. On June 30th, 1882, Second Lieutenant Henry Ossian Flipper was drummed out of the United States Army with a dismissal, the officer equivalent of a dishonorable discharge. He lost his commission. He lost his rank. He lost his military career. He lost everything he'd worked for since he was a boy, dreaming of West Point in post-war Atlanta. He sold his horses and traveled to El Paso, Texas, disgraced, unemployed, and effectively blacklisted from military service. But Henry Flipper refused to accept defeat. Over the next 58 years, he built a remarkable civilian career. He worked as a surveyor and civil engineer throughout the Southwest and Mexico. He became an expert on Spanish and Mexican land law, translating complex legal documents for the United States government. In 1895, the government published his translation of Spanish and Mexican Land Laws, New Spain and Mexico. He surveyed mining claims, worked as a special agent for the Justice Department, and served as an aide to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. In 1919, his fluency in Spanish earned him a position as interpreter and translator for a Senate subcommittee. In 1921, he became Special Assistant to the Secretary of the Interior, working with the Alaskan Engineering Commission. In 1923, William F. Buckley hired him as an engineer for the newly formed Pantepec Oil Company in Venezuela, where he worked until 1930. But through every success, every achievement, every new position, Henry Flipper carried one burden: the stain of his dishonorable discharge, the injustice of his court-martial. He never stopped fighting to clear his name. In 1898, during the Spanish-American War, Flipper volunteered for military service. A bill was introduced in Congress to restore his rank. It died in committee. He tried again and again. In 1924, he made his final attempt. Another bill was introduced in the Senate. It too died quietly, buried by indifference. Henry Flipper died on May 3, 1940, in Atlanta, Georgia, at the age of 84. He was 58 years removed from that June morning at Fort Davis, when his Army career ended. He died without vindication. He died with that dishonorable discharge still attached to his name. For 36 years after his death, nothing changed. Then, in 1972, a Georgia schoolteacher named Ray McCall began researching Flipper's case at the urging of Flipper's niece, Ursula Flipper King. McCall uncovered the extent of racial bias in the court-martial. He documented the disparity in sentencing. He built an undeniable case that Henry Flipper had been railroaded. In 1976, Flipper's descendants and supporters applied to the Army Board for correction of military records. The board reviewed the evidence. They acknowledged that they lacked authority to overturn the court-martial conviction itself. But they reached a stunning conclusion. The conviction and punishment were unduly harsh and unjust. On December 13th, 1976, the Army changed Flipper's discharge from dismissal to honorable discharge, effective June 30th, 1882. After 94 years, Henry Flipper's military record was corrected. But correcting the record wasn't enough. In 1997, a private law firm, Arnold and Porter, filed an application for a presidential pardon on Flipper's behalf. The application moved through government channels. Typically, pardon applications were rejected if the intended recipient was deceased. The Justice Department had maintained this policy for decades. On February 19, 1999, President Bill Clinton signed the first posthumous presidential pardon in American history. Henry Ossian Flipper was fully and unconditionally pardoned of any wrongdoing. 117 years after he was drummed out of the Army, Henry Flipper's name was finally completely cleared. Today, West Point honors the man it once isolated. In 1977, a bust of Lieutenant Flipper was unveiled at the Academy. The Henry O. Flipper Award is now presented annually to graduating cadets who demonstrate leadership, self-discipline, and perseverance in the face of unusual difficulties. It's one of the highest honors West Point bestows. The story of Henry Flipper's court-martial matters because it illuminates a larger truth about American history. This country has repeatedly asked black men and women to serve, to sacrifice, to prove themselves worthy of opportunities that white citizens receive without question. And when they do prove themselves, when they excel despite overwhelming obstacles, the system often punishes them for daring to succeed. Henry Flipper graduated from West Point despite 4 years of isolation and harassment. He served with distinction on the frontier. He engineered solutions to real problems that saved lives. He did everything the Army asked of him, and more. His reward was to be set up by a racist commanding officer, convicted on a technicality, and dismissed with a punishment no white officer received for similar or worse offenses. The missing commissary funds that triggered Flipper's downfall amounted to roughly $1,440. The evidence suggests his housekeeper may have stolen them. Flipper's only real crime was attempting to hide the theft, to avoid giving his enemies the ammunition they needed to destroy him. He knew they were looking for any excuse. He knew his race made him vulnerable. He knew the system was rigged against him. He was right on every count. Colonel Shafter got what he wanted. A black officer removed from his command. The white officers who found Flipper's friendship with Molly Dwyer intolerable got what they wanted. Proof that black officers didn't belong. The racial order that demanded black men accept inferior status was reinforced, but they couldn't destroy what Henry Flipper built. His engineering works endure. His writings remain invaluable historical documents. His example inspired generations of black officers who followed. Between 1870 and 1935, only 3 black men graduated from West Point. Henry Flipper in 1877, John Hanks Alexander in 1887, and Charles Young in 1891, 1,889. The fourth wouldn't come until 1936, when Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. graduated and went on to command the Tuskegee Airmen. Each of these men endured the same silencing, the same isolation, the same systematic attempts to break them. Some, like Davis, faced formal investigations designed to force them out. The system's hostility to black excellence was relentless. Henry Flipper spent 58 years fighting to clear his name. He died before achieving vindication. But his fight wasn't wasted. It taught us that injustice deferred is still injustice. That wrongs don't become right simply because time passes. That America must reckon with how it has treated those who served despite being unwanted. The court-martial of Lieutenant Henry Flipper in 1881 was not about missing commissary funds. It was about a nation unwilling to accept that a black man could be an officer and a gentleman. About white supremacy enforcing its boundaries through military law. About courage confronting a system designed to crush it. In the end, Henry Flipper won. Not in his lifetime, but in legacy. The first black West Point graduate became a symbol of perseverance against impossible odds. The disgraced lieutenant became an honored pioneer. The victim of injustice became a testament to the long arc bending toward justice. On that June morning in 1882, they took his uniform and his rank. They thought they'd taken everything that mattered. They were wrong. Henry Flipper's real legacy wasn't his commission. It was proving that excellence cannot be destroyed by prejudice, that truth eventually surfaces despite attempts to bury it, and that one person's courage to fight for justice, even after death, can change how a nation remembers its past. Lieutenant Henry Ossian Flipper graduated from West Point on June 14, 1877. He was dismissed from the Army on June 30, 1882. He was pardoned by the President of the United States on February 19, 1999. Justice delayed is justice denied. But sometimes, even after death, justice arrives. And when it does, it demands we remember why it took so long.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Walton Raji, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm here to speak with the grandchildren of Sarah Rector Campbell Howard. I think I have all of her names, and but I'm just thrilled. The world, of course, knows her story as Sarah Rector. Those who were alive in the early part of Sarah's life read about her life, obviously, in the national press as the richest colored girl in America. But there's a lot more to it than one would see from sensational headlines. So I'm here and delighted to welcome members. These are some of the direct descendants of Sarah Rector and her family. And I would love for you all to please introduce yourselves and share with our viewers how you are connected to Sarah Rector. And I will begin by calling on those in order that you appear on my screen. I see Miss Sharon, who is there. Would you introduce yourself, where you live, and how do you connect to Sarah Rector?
Gladly. My name is Sharon R. Campbell Marshall, and I am the older of the descendants of Sarah Rector. There started out to be 8 of us, and a few have passed on, but we still have 4 here strong, and happy to be doing this podcast with you with regard to our grandmother, who we all miss dearly. So, and I'm born here in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been here lifelong and still a resident of.
So, of course, as the oldest, I will probably ask you a few more questions because you may have the longer memory of Sarah. But thank you for introducing yourself. And next on my screen is a namesake of Sarah Rector. That's Miss Sarah Campbell. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having us. I truly appreciate it. My name is Sarah Campbell, as you stated, the namesake of my grandmother, Sarah Rector. I too, born and raised in Kansas City and live in a suburb of the city in Kansas City, Missouri. So thank you for having us.
Where do you fit among all the children in the family then? Are you the youngest grandchild, the second oldest? Where do you fit in the line?
The baby.
I am actually the youngest. Yes.
See, an older sister had to chime in there.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, my mom still calls me the baby, but I'm the youngest.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, Miss Cheryl, you are next on my screen.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again for having us.
You're
I'm
welcome.
Cheryl Fleming, Cheryl Campbell Fleming, and I'm second to the youngest of the children from Sarah Rector. I'm one of the grandchildren. So our father is Clarence Campbell and Bobby Campbell, and Bobby Campbell is still with us. So Sarah Rector has a daughter-in-law and 4 living grandchildren.
Wow, very good, very good, very good. And Miss Charisse, you're over there and at the end of my screen.
last but not least, unfortunately, I wish my uncle could have been on here, which is the fourth grandchild. His
Yeah.
name is Darren Campbell. And my name, as I said before, my Sharice Campbell Robley. I was born and raised in Kansas City. My mom is Sharon. I moved to Minnesota in 94, where I still reside to this day in 2025. It's unbelievable. And also, it's the home of the Koch brothers, who actually have ties to Sarah Rector in some way, but I'm sure we'll dig into that much later on. But thanks for having us, and I'm so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
You are more than welcome. Well, one of the reasons we're here, as we know, a film is being made about your grandmother. And most of the film will focus on her life as a child. She was a young girl when she had received her land allotment. And of course, as we all know, the larger part of the story, oil was discovered on her allotted land. I'm curious how you all, as members of the family, feel about the fact that they are making a film, even though it's not going to cover her entire life. It's just focusing on her childhood. But how do you feel about the fact that a film is being made, and it's a feature film? It's going to be in, on the large screen in theaters. What is your reaction to that? Sharon, I'll start with you.
Totally ecstatic.
Okay.
I never once, yes. And I say that because my journey, although it started in researching Sarah Rector further, when I was 22 years old. I'm 72, so that's 50 years ago.
Wow.
However, yeah, however, I have a very keen memory with regard to Sarah Rector. She was very much a part of all of our lives up until the point of her passing in 1967.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're looking forward to the film. I assume you're going to be all there eagerly in line at the theater box office.
Center. And I brought that 22 up because we have been wanting, my parents wanted this to happen many years ago, which is why my dad spent a great deal of time researching and trying to find out about her property and other things. So with that, I just never thought that this would come to fruition in my lifetime.
Well, let me ask a question. I'll follow up on that. I mean,
Yeah.
so you knew her. I would assume she's a member of the family. How many people, even I'm sure children of royalty in many countries of the world, they know their parents as mom and dad, and they know their family as family. You knew your grandmother as your grandmother. Did you know her story? Or was she, grandma? What did you know about her story in terms of her early life? Did you know that growing up?
I knew bits and pieces growing up, but nothing with regard to my parents sharing her her vast wealth. And I didn't understand that until she was way gone.
Sure.
However, I do have several fond memories with Sarah Rector. Yes.
Well, I'll ask others as well. Cheryl, did you have knowledge of her story? And I mean her story, not just that, she had money or she could afford to buy this, that, or the other, or maybe a house or a car or whatever. But did you have knowledge of how people were sort of after her for her wealth? Did you know that part of the story?
I knew about her wealth. I knew about her story, how it all came about. I mean, my father spoke of her quite often. So we all grew up with her story. We've heard it many, many years. I mean, our entire lives. And my dad spent a lot of time researching and trying to recover some of her legacy over our years. So, yes.
Now,
we've heard
just for clarification, now who was your father then? This would be one of her children from her marriage to Kenneth Campbell, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, which child would that be?
Campbell, the youngest.
Okay. Oh, the youngest. Okay. Very good. Very good to know that.
She had 3 sons, and he was the youngest, and he had 8 kids. He wanted 10, but anyway.
Wow. Be
8
fruitful and
boys to be
multiply.
exact.
My goodness. Okay, that's very interesting. Sharice, I'm curious in terms of how much you knew yourself. I mean, obviously you all are growing up around each other. You may have shared stories, but when did Sarah's story, sort of the headlining stories, become part of what you knew about your grandmother?
I feel really blessed because I was able to be with my mom and her siblings and my grandparents from when I was born in 1970 to 1993 when my grandfather passed away. So I was 23 years old. So I got to grow with him throughout my whole life. So I think it was around the age of either 16 when I realized who my great grandmother was. And I think around 21 is when it really sunk in when we were in the call paper. That's when it really sunk in for me that, hey, I'm coming from this lineage, this powerful, strong lineage that I really don't know nothing about or even how to wrap my hands around it. So, yeah, it's a pretty amazing.
Wow.
At the age of 55 now, and look, here we are. It's pretty amazing.
Incredible.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Wow, I go
And
back
her
as far as my
namesake, Sarah, I want to hear from you. You've got her name. Did you know the story that went along with the name Sarah?
I'm like everyone else. I just knew bits and pieces about it, and I always wondered because my 3 older sisters. I wondered why me? Like, why did I get her name? And my mom shared with me actually recently that Sarah was asking Dad to name one of us after her, and she had been asking for years, and so they finally did it. And so my dad went to her, and he was like, "Okay, we did it. My youngest, her name is Sarah," and she was elated. According to my mom, she was elated. She said, "Finally, you named one after me after all these years." So it's a blessing and a curse sometimes because there's so much. It's a legacy, and it's a heavy because you think about all these things, and all of us have had times in which we've researched her, we've wondered who she was. I thought it was like a mythical person. I didn't know it was like a real person, is what it felt like to me.
Right.
But then as all these, over the years, we've gone back and forth to Oklahoma, and we've done so many things as a family. And then my dad was ever so present with us and told us about her. And it would bring so much joy to his face just talking about her. But it also brought pain because he passed before he could really get to things that he wanted to get to. So this is all super, super exciting. And it's wonderful to really see her come to life. It's like now we really get to know who Sarah is because this brings her to life. So it's very exciting.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Now, your dad was the youngest. What about your other uncles? And of course, you have tons of myriad of cousins out there too. Do you think that her story was known widespread throughout, I'll just say, the descendant group? I mean, there are many branches. Every family has many branches on the tree, every sibling who has their own children and grandchildren and so on. But would you say collectively, it's been sort of almost an individual process to find more of that story? And anyone can answer that. I won't direct it to one single person. I'll start with the namesake, Sarah. Okay.
I think everybody has had like their individual journey, getting to know Sarah and what Sarah was about. I think she means something different to everybody.
Oh, sure.
And so I think it's been a journey. It's been an amazing journey for years. We grew up with our cousins. and we spent a lot of time with them, and we kind of grew up more like sisters and brothers, and that type of thing. So as we began to get older and everybody was kind of having their own Sarah Rector journey, we all had different stories and how we would just enlighten each other with our own experiences. And every time we go back to Oklahoma, we learn something new.
Wow,
So
that's amazing. You made me think of another question. Where are all the different branches? Is everybody mostly in still Kansas City area? Or, well, we know one of you is up there in the deep freeze up there in Minnesota. But are there other parts of the country where different branches of the family have settled? Anyone can handle that. Miss Sharon, I see you kind of nodding there. You may know. As the
Yes,
elder of the group.
I think I had a great relationship with my grandmother. I can recall birthdays and birthday celebrations, going back as far as 4 years old. And then on my fifth birthday, she had an article placed in the Kansas City Call, which I have the original. My mom gave it to me years later. However, at 5 years old, I had like 30 or 40 something children at my fifth birthday. So
that's
that
impressive.
stands out. Yes, yes.
I didn't know 30 or 40 people at that age.
Oh,
wow.
just kids from our neighborhood at 2600 Lockridge.
Wow.
So that was pretty fantastic. In regard to going to school, kindergarten, there were some days that she sent her driver as well as herself to drop me off at school and sometimes pick me up in the evenings and return me home. I can recall many days that in her picking me up, she would stop off at various stores. And I didn't understand at that time. I was far too young. Even at 10 years old, I didn't understand her power at that time. But I do understand that she would leave me, like she'd have her driver drive us to this one store, and it was called Emery Bird Fair. I'll never, ever forget it because it was at 12th and Petticoat Lane. The entire building was pink, and it had these huge big balls in every archway of the store, these beautiful pink flowers. So when we would pull up to it, she'd tell Leroy he'd come out, get out of the car, and walk around to the passenger back, open the door, and let her out. So when she would get out, I automatically thought I was getting out with her. And she turned around and said, "No, you have to stay in the car, and I'll be right back out." So, I start bawling and crying. I remember it like yesterday. Because once I lost sight of her, that's when I really started to cry. And the driver, Leroy, says, "Don't cry. She'll be right back. Come on, you want to drive? You want to get here with me to distract me? I know this today." I didn't know it then. However, in climbing over the front seat, I had a dress on. So my right knee got hung up in the hem of my dress, and I actually fell over the front seat. And at that time in her car, her rear view mirror was mounted to the top of the dashboard. So the left side of my head connected with it. It also cut it. So he had, I had a little gash, and I still have it there today. It's gone nowhere. It's still there as a reminder. But at any rate, when she came out, needless to say, I was in trouble, but not enough trouble to where she didn't stop to get my butterscotch swirl ice cream, which was one of my favorites.
Oh, well, that's a sweet story. That's wonderful. Well, I'm curious. You mentioned, of course, the 35 children at your party, but it appears though that there were other, cousins, because you had uncles and whatever. I don't know if she had a sister. I don't think she did, but or if your dad rather had sisters. But there are other cousins.
She had sisters and she had other siblings.
Okay, but what about? I'm thinking of your dad's siblings.
I knew very well of my two uncles.
Are you all still in Kansas City, or where are they?
No, my father's older brothers all passed away before he did.
Where did they live?
That would be Leonard. Leonard lived in Kansas City at the time as he passed.
Okay.
And Kenneth also lived. In fact, he lived across the street from us at 2631 Lockridge. Wow. So he passed in the early 60s. And I can't recall the year that my uncle Leonard passed away. I just know that he was 63, which is kind of odd because Sarah was 63, Leonard was 63 when he passed, including our father was 63 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, but
That's
I have
amazing.
very fond memories of both of them. Kenneth, the
Did they have
older, and Uncle
children?
Leonard.
Did the uncles have children?
Kenneth did not. And my Uncle Leonard had one daughter. She passed away, oh my God, 30, 40 years ago.
Mm.
So that
So
would be
are
it.
there other than descendant cousins? Did she have children? That one daughter, did she have children too?
No, she passed really early in life. I believe her to be between 20 and 22 years old.
Oh, wow. How very sad. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to hear that. Wow, my goodness. So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of interesting. Well, let's talk about Sarah herself. You've already shared sort of a fascinating memory, I guess. I can imagine her coming back to the car and seeing her, you know,
Right. Yeah,
seeing her
I didn't do
granddaughter
what she said
bleeding.
do. Yeah.
There may be blood coming out of your head. But
Yeah.
are there other favorite stories that some of you have? Now, some of you were born maybe after she had passed away, but maybe there are favorite stories that you've heard about her. Are there any stories that you'd like to share? I see Sarah's namesake smiling. Do you have a story to share with us, Sarah?
Well, the stories that I enjoyed the most when my older siblings or my dad would tell us the story, it was on her farm. That's where Sarah was more of just being herself. She didn't
Okay.
have to be anyone. She didn't have to showcase or anything like that. And my dad would go to the farm, and they would get ready to prepare dinner. And so Sarah and my dad would go out in the field there and pick up the chickens, and they would both pick up 2 chickens each, and they would ring them themselves.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and she
I
was
got to
out
see
there
that.
and she did that, and then they would take them inside and then prepare them for dinner. But I just can't really fathom or imagine her being in the Rector mansion, but then being in the farm, and she's out in the field and wringing chickens' necks and
Wow.
preparing dinner.
Where was the
So
farm located?
it was in Kansas City, Kansas.
Oh, on the Kansas side of the state line.
Yes,
Gotcha. Oh,
yes,
wow.
yes.
Oh,
So
how
that was
2600
I just have one more
Ridgeview.
short one to tell you, because this one always brings a smile to my face. My older sister, Sandra, she loved going to the farm and she had a favorite pig. And she loved this pig. She named the pig. She always looked forward to going to Sarah's farm so she could see this pig. Well, one day they sat down for dinner, and she says, I didn't see Charlie. Where's Charlie?" And someone said,
on your plate.
"Yes, you're eating Charlie." And she was so upset about it. But it's just,
Oh,
that was just the family times. That was like our
sure.
safe place to gather and just enjoy each other. So those are my favorite stories.
Oh, okay. Well, Cheryl, do you have a favorite story about your grandmother?
Yes, I would say just learning about her lifestyle. When she had her wealth, they said that she entertained, she was a huge entertainer, and celebrities and artists will come from all parts of the, United States to just hang out and have a great time with her. She was very generous and welcoming, and her place was the place to hang out. And I just
Okay.
thought that was interesting. My dad.
Okay. Do you know if that contrasted with the family memory of her? She sounds like she was a good country woman. Of course, she was a country woman. She was from Taft. That's a small town.
Mhm.
And people in Taft had land allotments. They had farms. So of course she knew what it was like. You kill the chicken, you eat the chicken, you pluck the chicken and what have you. But then there was her city life. Kansas City, everybody thinks of 12th Street and Vine. Well, she's 12th and Euclid, certainly where the family lived. But, you know, she may have been social in one part of her life, but she was a country woman as well. And it sounds like she still maintained some of that country life, growing up in the Creek Nation, growing up on the soil, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like the two lives of Sarah Rector, so to speak, which is kind
Well,
of
you can
interesting.
take the girl out of the country, but not the country out of the girl.
There you go. And I see Sharice over there nodding and
That's
agreeing.
good.
What do you
That's
have to
good.
share? Sharice, do you have a favorite story or memory, or as you even reflect on things that maybe you've learned about her in recent years, is there something that grabs you in particular?
Well, I just think the story itself, I've never met. I mean, I'm 55, so in my lifetime, I've done a lot of different things and met a lot of different people from all walks of life. And I've never met anyone with such a story as this, which makes me, at this age, really sit back and really reflect on what it must have been like for her, or what it not must have, but what it might have been like for her. Those are my thoughts now. Coming up through, 1907 all the way to 1967, going through Jim Crow. I think about her and my grandparents, what they all must have experienced and the strength that it must have took. So from that, I gained strength in my own life and what I deal with on a daily basis in work and private life.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. It does. And one of the things particularly that just popped in my mind. Now, of course, her oil was discovered on her property. She was a Creek freedman, descendant of people who were Creek freedmen as well. And there's an entire rich history, and I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to explore a little bit of that history. Creeks, of course, came, during the years of Indian removal in the 1830s, and they brought enslaved people with them.
Right.
And their history is truly amazing because even prior to emancipation, there were people who were emerging because keep in mind, these are people who are bilingual. Sarah's grandparents probably spoke little to no English. Muskogee would have been their mother tongue. But there were people who are amazing, and I enjoy Creek history. Some of my favorite people, and myself as a historian and researcher about Oklahoma freedmen from all 5 tribes, which is what I research, freedmen from all 5 tribes. Some of the favorite people that I have come from the Creek Nation. There is Cow Tom, who was a major leader. There was Silas Jefferson, also an interpreter. Cow Tom was bilingual interpreter as well. Sugar T. George, one of my favorite people from the Muskogee Nation. He was served with the Indian Home Guards, which was one of 3 Union regiments out of Indian Territory. The rest of the 24 plus regiments during the Civil War out of Indian Territory, people don't know this, were all Confederates. And Sugar George and others, Ketch Barnett and others, served in the Union Army and as interpreters and soldiers, and amazingly rich history. Have you all had a chance to explore your Creek ancestry, not just names on an enrollment card or a name to put on a family tree, but have you all had a chance to explore some of that history, incredibly rich history of Creek freedmen who were movers and shakers in Indian Territory history? Have any of you had a chance to go farther with that richness? Because she was sort of at that tail end. She was born in 1902.
Yeah.
The Dawes Commission had been underway since 1898. And the purpose of the Dawes Commission was to redistribute land to the people who already owned the land, because land was owned in common. If you and I were next door neighbors, my cow could go and graze in your pasture and vice versa, because all the land belonged to everyone. But now, because the goal was to lead towards Oklahoma becoming a state, which did happen in 1907, but the idea was to introduce private parcels of land. Gonna fence it off. You can't get any further than my fence, and my cows can't get any further and go into your pasture and go beyond the fence. Private parcels of land. In the Creek Nation, everyone got approximately 160 acres of land. That's how Sarah got her land. She was allotted, as everyone was on the Dawes roll. Even the babies were allotted 160 acres of land. And so, but as I said, after this process had already been underway when she was even born. So by the time they discovered oil on her property, she's growing up still now in the state of Oklahoma because statehood was '07. But now it's different. Indian Territory history has gone, has not gone, but has moved. Time has moved on, and now it's early 20th century history. Have you all had an opportunity? And I'll start with Sharon as the elder in the group. Have you had a chance to explore what that Creek history consisted of?
Somewhat, and I became aware of some of the siblings of Sarah Rector by researching her own history along with my parents.
Okay.
My earliest or recollection, I was about 22 years old, the first trip I made with my parents. And in printing all this material with regard to Sarah, her land allotments, and then being able to drive to them some of the land allotments, and we actually stood on ground with. So that was something else than to watch my father and his experience just in standing on that land. With regard to the Dawes list, she has several brothers and sisters, and of course, both of her parents. And in researching Sarah, we also did a little research on her parents because my dad couldn't recall some of the history with him. So in looking at that, there were several brothers and sisters. There was Joseph and several other. I can't recall them currently.
Sure.
I haven't seen it in years. But that's how I became aware of the Dawes list and all of her other brothers and sisters. The only
Wow.
sister that I know of Sarah was Rosa, Rosa Brown, and she passed in 1992. We also had a very close relationship with all of the Rectors and the Browns and the Gibbs.
Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, that's really great to hear that. Certainly, I hope that you all will have a chance to meet others from the Creek Nation. One thing I do like, and I hope they've kept it in the film, we'll find out when it certainly hits the big screen. And a lot of people understand, which was sort of, I guess, the early part of the Great Migration, Kansas City being one of those destination cities. In fact, I would encourage you to just, if you have an old high school yearbook, go through it. I'll bet many of your classmates are descendants of freedmen from one of the 5 tribes because so many people left Oklahoma and went right to Kansas City. And Kansas City is a hotbed for freedmen descendants. And there are plenty of people who don't know this history, though. And it's so incredible a history to have and to explore. But I guess one of the things that I am at least happy to see, and hope we'll see it in the film, at least I do recall seeing a little piece of it, is that you see, just in passing, some little playmates that Sarah had. And you see Herbert and I think her name was Sylvia Sells, Sells. And the Sells children, you need to know their name. They would have been friends. They were all in Taft. But sadly, their story was a tragic one, which is one reason why Sarah's story is so remarkable. Because they were literally murdered for their land allotments. Someone had paid a gentleman in the area, another freedman descendant, I believe, to put some dynamite underneath their house. And the one, I guess, where the one explosion was the strongest was under the little girl's bedroom. And sadly, she died a very painful death because it started a fire and they could not remove the embers and rescue her. But you'll see Sells children in the film as well. And this is a part of the realistic story. I've heard others talk about the fact that people left Muskogee County, and some ended up in Kansas City, some went other places, saying it's too dangerous, just get out of there. And that's probably in relation to what happened to the Sales children. Sarah was able to hold on to her land. She did go to Tuskegee, I understand, because many of the historically Black institutions had preparatory schools up until like maybe the late 1930s and early 1940s. Most of your HBCUs actually had preparatory schools, and she went to Tuskegee. I believe she may have gone to Fisk as well, but she was able to be safe. And of course, later, of course, she married and went on with her life. Thankfully, the fact that she did get away is what makes her story so important. Mm-hmm. And because she did live to adulthood and did live to enjoy her riches, as people ask. So, did your family ever hear of any of the stories and the stories that affected the children? Because Sarah was not only the only child of oil wealth. There were the Sales children. There was little Danny Tucker, who was another oil child. There were the Manuel children. But of course, hers is probably the most resilient of the stories that we've heard. I think there was something that had happened with the finances of Danny Tucker. And I don't know if it was when he was a young adult or when. But did you all hear any of those other stories? What happened to some of the other children or some of the other attempts? You know, that they had guardians appointed to Black children, and even to some of the Native children, the Indian children as well. I see, Sharice, you're nodding. You may have heard some stories.
I didn't realize it was so many. It wasn't just like a few. It was hundreds of them.
Well, in terms of the oil stories, definitely. But what happened was, in many cases, guardians were appointed for minor children, although they didn't need guardians. Sarah had parents, but she was not an orphan child.
Yeah, it looked like they appointed the kids that had oil with these white guardians, whereas the kids that had land, that had parents, and they may have been poor. Funny, those kids their parents were their guardians.
Right.
So that I found that to be a little odd.
Well, they declared the owner of the oil-rich land as incompetent.
Right, of course. Right. Yeah, of course.
That did happen.
So they can rule the land.
Exactly. And in many cases, they took a lot of that money and enriched themselves. So that did happen too. So, but did any of you hear from either your parents or grandparents, or uncles and aunties, any other similar stories of, why the family had pretty much removed itself from Oklahoma at all, or it may not have been necessarily something you would have heard growing up in a big city, it was not part of everyday life. But I don't know if any of you heard these stories.
I didn't necessarily hear it from my family, but just throughout doing research. Like I said, everybody had their own journeys with doing research on Sarah and different times going back and forth to Oklahoma. But I did hear some stories about some of the kids that did perish, unfortunately. And, they took their land from them. And honestly, I feel like if Booker T and W.B. Du Bois didn't get involved in Sarah's life, then maybe her life would have been different. I know when she went to Tuskegee to go to school, when she turned 18, she was out of there, but she was not going back to Oklahoma because it was still dangerous. It was very, very dangerous, for anyone, for African Americans that had oil, had money, had land. It was extremely dangerous. And so her family had already migrated. And that was one of the reasons that her family migrated to Kansas City, despite the fact that Kansas City was booming in the early 1920s. 12th Street Corridor and Vine and the Jazz District just blew up literally in Kansas City. But when she turned 18, she decided to go there with her family and meet them there as well. But We did have, and Sharon can give more backstory on this, but we did have relatives that lived on the reservation. That was part of the Muskogee Creek Nation. That I unfortunately wasn't old enough to go and visit them, but Sharon did, so she can give you a little bit more backstory on that.
Let's hear more about that, Sharon.
Well, I do know that we had relatives that resided in all the different cities that she ended up owning properties in, which is Sapulpa County, Wagner, Okmulgee, Taft. Yes, got to visit one family or our family there in Sapulpa County, which are the Stricklands. And then to meet Danny Joe, and he is in Okmulgee.
Okay. Oh,
and
Okmulgee is the capital of the Creek Nation.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes, yes. So, and then some of the properties that they still reside on today, my understanding was that Danny Joe has built his home on one of her properties there in Okmulgee. So when we would go visit to Oklahoma, we actually got to stay with him. And he had 3 kids at that time. I have no idea what he's doing today, you know. So, but yes.
Well, you've answered one of my questions because I had wanted to know if she had maintained ties to Oklahoma. So clearly so. And I'm just sort of curious, you know, I guess there's still possibly family still there, cousins or what have you may still be in Oklahoma. And they may not even be aware of Sarah's legacy, or do you think that they may be?
Oh, absolutely, I do.
Okay.
I remember Kermit the most because we stayed in his home. We stayed in Danny Joe's home in Okmulgee. But in Sapulpa County, where Kermit Strickland lived, he was also the police chief. And he had to be, I guess, around 40, 50 years old at that time. I don't even know if he's still living today, but I remember his hospitality. He treated us just like who we were, family. Getting up, cooking breakfast for, and there had to be about, 15, 20 of us. The first time I went down was for her funeral. The second time we went down, it was actually on vacation with my parents. So, and then the last time I went down, we went to look at the home that Danny Joe built himself on a tract of her land there in Okmulgee. So
now was it land that she must have later purchased because her land, her allotted land was basically around Taft or part of the area on the Cimarron River. And by the way, those wells are still pumping. I think she may have sold a portion of her land in the 1930s or 40s. I'm not sure when that may have happened. I don't know if you all are aware when she may have done that, because she bought other properties, I know, in Kansas City as well. So
no, I went to each of her properties there in Kansas City, Missouri. In fact, we grew up in living in one of her properties there at 2600 Lockridge. Sarah, our grandmother, also lived on Lockridge. Her home is 5-bedroom, 2-bath at 2607 Lockridge. And then her oldest son moved into one of her properties at 2631 Lockridge. So we were very close in as far as family living together there and on the same block and seeing everybody every day. So yeah, I recall all of that.
Wow. Are any of these homes still standing today, to your knowledge?
Yes, Sarah's home is still, oh my God, we just went to look at it about a week ago, in fact, and I hadn't been over there in many of years. But her property, so whoever purchased it has done very well, exceedingly well for the location in which it's set. But it's a beautiful home. They really put some money into it. So it's a gorgeous
that's so
home
good
today.
to know.
Yes.
Wow.
Where we lived at is now a vacant lot. And then one of the other, whoever lives on at 2631, that home was torn down, and I know this because we talked to some of the people there. that were outside when we went to view the properties a week ago. They were having some kind of event going on. So everybody was out and eating barbecue and having a good time. And one of the ladies shared with us that the person that lives on the corner about they called her Miss Crawford. But anyway, Miss Rector, our grandmother, where 2631 is now a part of his property. So he built this huge home on these two properties. So it's
Are they
still a good
aware
thing.
that this is formerly Sarah Rector's property? They do
Yes,
know
we
that.
were shocked that they knew her
Oh,
by name
oh,
and shared with
okay.
us how Sarah. I really rode with my sister Sarah. We were out touring some of her properties from back in the day
Wow.
about a week ago.
Oh, how wonderful. That's really
Yeah,
exciting. Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
yes,
So she
and
actually has
she'll
the two properties that are still here. 2000 East 12th Street is the Rector Mansion. And then the home that she lived in at 2607 Lockridge are the two properties in Kansas City that are still standing today.
Are
And they're
there,
both on historical
well,
registry as well.
I know that the Rector Mansion, 12th and Euclid, of course, everybody knows where that is. Is there a historical marker there?
Not
Or
yet.
not yet. I hope that something will happen and there needs to be. But also, it would be nice to maybe see something in some of the properties that she used to own. Her farm in Kansas, on the Kansas side of the state line. Is that still in the family? Was it sold? Whatever happened to her farm?
It
it was
was
sold.
sold.
It
Yeah.
was.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's very interesting. Well, there's so much, of course, to her story. And of course, I know that she died, what, 1967? Was that the year she
Yes.
passed away?
Yes.
Okay. Were you all
On a
present?
Saturday morning at 11:15 to be exact.
Had she been ill? What were the circumstances around her death?
No, she had not. Well, in fact, that morning, my mom was up, I was up. My dad was sleeping because he was working two jobs in Ford Motors where he was. He worked
Wow.
nights. So at any
Okay.
rate, the phone rang. My mother told me to get it. I did. And they wanted to speak with dad. And I said, he's sleeping. And so they said, well, where's Bobby? And I said, wait a minute. So I ran and got her. She was upstairs. I was in the living room watching cartoons while the other kids were sleeping. However, when she came downstairs to answer the phone in the kitchen, to keep from disturbing our dad because he was asleep and he got in late in the morning from Ford. However, I knew it had to be something serious, and I can still hear that today. Her dropping the kitchen phone and screaming in the
Mm.
kitchen, oh my God, no, no, no. So I got out of my dad's recliner, ran in the kitchen and said, Mom, what's the matter? What's the matter? And she says, go get Mary. Go get Mary. I can't do this. And I'm going, you can't do what, Mom? She said, just go get Mary. And that
Oh,
was her
wow.
friend that lived directly across the street from us. And I knocked on the door, ran across the street, got Mary Washington, said, Mom, need to see you right away. And then when she came on over, naturally, my mom told me to go on upstairs. I need to talk to her. Of course, I went
Mm.
out of sight. I didn't go upstairs. And I wanted to hear. And she was
Mm.
beside herself because she didn't know how to tell my dad that his mom had passed.
Mm.
So, in getting her, she asked her, she told her, there's no way I can wake him up and tell him anything like this. So Mary said, I'll go up. So they both went upstairs and I went on the tail end and
Mm.
stuck my head in the bedroom and watching my dad, who was asleep. My mom shook and shook, Clarence, Clarence, you got to wake up. Clarence, you got to wake up. And my dad sit up and I can see it like I can see today. And my mom was standing at the foot of the bed. Mary's on the side of the bed. And she was saying, Clarence, you need to sit up. I need you to sit up so I know that you are awake. Clarence, are you up? So he finally sit up on the side of the bed. And she said, I got something to tell you, Clarence, and it's going to be hard to listen to. But we need you awake for this. And my dad was just looking up at him like, what? And she says to him, I hate to tell you this, but your mom just passed away. And the only reason I know the time because they had a big clock over their headboard, and that clock said 11:15. And I'm standing here, and my dad just all at once, I don't know what made him, but he just hit the headboard. No way, no way. And it was something else to
So that,
see
what
him.
month was that? What time of the year was that? July. Bless her
Yeah,
heart.
July
Wow.
22nd.
So was she had a funeral in Kansas City or back in Oklahoma, or
He had three. I went to all three.
really? Where were they?
The first one was at Bruce Watkins' funeral home. And then the second funeral was the following day, and it would happen to be at C.K. Kerford. And the Kerford house, which I didn't know until we actually got there, that I'm going, wow, that's the house that I used to play in. I did not know at 14 that the house that I used to play in when I was 6 and 7 and 10 years old, that that house was no longer hers, but in fact had become a funeral home.
Oh,
So
wow.
her second funeral was actually held in a property that she used to own.
Wow.
And 3 days later, we all drove, or my parents and all of the family, whatever, drove to Oklahoma, where we did her final funeral, and drove to the cemetery there in Taft. And then it was in Taft that I learned that the cemetery that she was buried in,
Blackjack. Yes.
Blackjack, she actually owned.
Really? Was that part of her land allotment or something she acquired later?
Something she acquired later.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh my goodness. Have you had a chance to visit it in recent years, since that time, to visit her gravesite?
Actually, no, I have not gone back to Oklahoma since my father passed.
What
May
year did your
13th,
father pass?
93, May 13th at 93.
1993. Oh, it's been a while then, definitely.
So,
Wow.
I
Sarah,
kind of,
you and Sharice didn't you? You guys went to Oklahoma.
did we? I don't know.
Sharice and Sarah.
Oh, I know Sarah and Sharice went. Did we ever go together, Sharice? Where is she?
Here. No, the last time we went to Oklahoma was in April of 2023. I'm sorry. April of 2023 is when me and Sarah.
Yeah.
So what part of Oklahoma did you have a chance to visit?
Oh, wow. We went to Okmulgee. We went to like 3 different areas and went to the some county courthouses to look up records. That's where we found that the oil, you're right, the oil is still pumping, and we found that it's owned by the United States
Yes, it is.
government. And yeah, so
if you get to Oklahoma within the next year or so, I have a friend who lives in Tulsa who can take you to the site where the Rector wells are pumping. And he can, take you right up there. And in fact, the next time I'm in Tulsa, he's going to take me to the Rector wells, and you'll still see the name Rector. In fact,
I think it'd be great if you go there. You let us know when you go, and we'll meet you there.
okay,
Absolutely.
All of us, we will meet you.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wow,
We would
that is
love
amazing.
to.
Yeah.
Let me
Oh,
add one
of
thing. We
course.
did go back. That's how I found out that her headstone had been changed. See, when I was there, we stayed there for about 4 days after the funeral there in Taft. And the headstone actually said her name.
Yes,
Sarah.
it did not have her married name, and I know
It was
she
in
preferred
Rector.
that name.
Yeah, it was in Rector. But then the last time that I went back down there, it said Aunt Sister.
Yes,
So I had to ask
that.
my mom, why is that? Who changed it? And why, see, the headstone was on the ground, the flat headstone.
Yes.
And then the next time I went, it was the one that kind of stood up so far, and it had Aunt Sister. And I had never heard that name before. So
No,
my mom
from what
explained to
I
me,
understand, that was a name that some of her nieces and nephews or
yes, they changed it.
and they called her that, which is fine. That was maybe a family name. But I thought when I saw it, and I'll have to check again on Find a Grave, but I thought it said, and I could see if it's aunt, sister, but I thought I saw aunt, comma, sister. And my reaction was
And
like
it is a comma between
a
it.
mother and a grandmother. She was not only an aunt, she was not only a sister, in
Yes.
spite of the term aunt sister, which could have been a favorite name that
It's
some
very
people
misleading. Like she had no children, let alone
right, and that
grand.
concerned me. And I was like, wow, that's kind of
Yeah.
odd. Not sure, but nothing should stop you from putting a second stone there.
Oh,
Her
we intend.
it's a gravesite. You can always
Sometime
put
we
a
will.
little monument.
Yes.
And it's something that, she was a grandmother, she was a mother, and she was a wife also when she passed away.
Yes.
So you certainly, even though her fame was that as Sarah Rector, but her life was lived as Sarah Campbell and then later Sarah Howard. And from what I understand,
No,
didn't
Crawford. Crawford.
Crawford, I'm sorry,
Crawford.
and Howard from,
Her last husband was William Crawford, which I remember him like yesterday as well, because at the latter part of his life, he had dementia real bad. So as opposed to putting him in a home, he actually lived with us for a little bit over a year.
is that
And
right?
then, yes, he did. We lived at 5412. I remember it like yesterday. I used to
Well,
like to hear him sing because he would sing and beat the pots and pans with spoons and
oh,
so I would run up and tell Dad he's back in the kitchen again. He's on the floor. He got all the pots and pans out and he's beating them with the spoons. And my dad would say, okay, leave him alone. I'll be down in just a minute. So there you go.
let me ask a
He was a
question. Do
nice
you
man.
have pictures of your dad and your grandparents and your grandfather? I mean, all of these are part of the Rector family history and the Campbell family history. She did not have children with Mr. Crawford.
Crawford. No, no. My dad was final.
Okay, so, but there is the Campbell family history. And are there other images that the family has to share with the world? This is part of her life. She did live a full life. And in her adult life, she was not just Sarah Rector. She was Sarah Campbell. She was Sarah Crawford. So, are there other images that you all may have in family collections that someone could pull up the old trunk and see what's
I think we all have pictures of our father doing holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and things like that, or his birthday. With regard to
say that. Do you all have a
others,
family
all of
tree?
those were destroyed in the fire. Our house caught on fire, and all of that stuff like that
I'm
burned
so
in the
sorry.
fire. Yeah,
When was the fire?
that was in what 70.
Yeah.
Oh,
Toward the
wow.
end
Yeah,
of
it's in the
this,
yeah
end of
5412, and I can say that because I was 6 months pregnant with my only kid, so I can't forget it.
Oh,
And we
wow.
ended up they put us up at the Holiday Inn for a couple of weeks while they worked out the insurance, whatever. So they
Sure.
redid it, and then we went back to live at 5412.
Wow. Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, are there other things that you would want the world to know about your grandmother, about Sarah Rector Campbell
she
Crawford?
she loved
Yeah.
fashion also, which you may already know that she loved shopping and
Yeah.
she had the latest fashions, and that's another story that I love about her because I love fashion too. But
Oh,
that she was quite into the latest fashion and she loved
And
looking.
perfumes. Yes.
Yes, she loved looking great.
Absolutely. I remember her favorite two fragrances, which is Wind Song, which was a glass bottle with a gold top and the pink label on the front trimmed in gold. I also remember Jordan, glass bottle, green paper, green and gold writing on the front of it, like a 3 ounce bottle.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, she was quite a dresser, absolutely. And I loved
Amazing.
her shoes most of all.
Oh,
Yeah,
does
she wore
does anyone
fancy, fancy shoes.
are there any artifacts that she left behind or family heirlooms that um people still look at and oh, that was grandma's favorite, whatever
We did
dress?
have, at one point, we really did have a lot of her things, like her dining room set. I remember it. Like, I wanted it so bad, and I asked my dad, "Can I have it?" But at any rate, we had her dining room set, and she had the most beautiful china cabinet. It was hand painted. I've never seen one like it, and I haven't seen one since.
Wow.
Where it was really tall, and the
Oh,
top of it was all wood, but it had these hand painted fruits on the front of it, like a round circle with bananas and
oh,
grapes and what have you. And the same thing on each side of it. And it had French doors. You open it out, and it had the little skeleton key right there in the front. So you turn the key,
wow.
you open the doors out. And my God, it was all red. It was red and then trimmed in this gold, like somebody spray painted that on there. You know what I mean? It's not what the whole thing, the whole cabinet on the inside was red, but around the top, bottom, and the sides, like it was just sprayed gold. But
Mm.
it was beautiful, and the shelves were just like the inside of the cabinet itself. The shelves were red, but when you look right there at the front of each shelf, it had that gold strip. It was amazing, and her china that was in it, and her stereo system my mom and dad used to have at the foot of their bed. Some of her clothing hang in our basement, in our recreation room. There were 6 doors downstairs, one of which we weren't allowed to go in anymore because her things were being stored in the far door on the left. When you go down the steps, you just go to the left. But at any rate, like I said, the house really took care of all of that. We couldn't, there was nothing left to it.
Oh,
I mean, it just gutted it up and down.
wow. That's heartbreaking. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you have that memory to share, which is
Oh,
so.
yeah. Sarah probably remembers a little bit of this because the day that it caught on fire, and I'm 6 months pregnant, and my mom says, "Get out, get out, get out." And I'm going. And so we came out. Now, Sarah was going to school, kindergarten,
Oh,
half
wow.
days. And she would go to school in the morning, but come home at 11:30. Now, the fire started about 12:30, 1 o'clock. So
Wow.
mom told me to run out. I ran out. She ran out.
I
And then mom
remember.
hits herself in the head like, "Oh my God, Sarah's in the house." So, it's just, and the fireman pulled up, jumped off the truck, and my mom was running back and forth across the yard. My
Oh,
daughter is up there. My daughter is up there. And so I know because I'm standing here and I want to go in with them. Of course, they wouldn't let me go because I'm 6 months pregnant.
no.
However, when they went to get Sarah, she had crawled out of our bedroom to the hall right there at the top of the steps. And I know that the firemen scared her because they had on these masks,
Of course. Of course.
and we could hear her screaming, "Good, no, stop!" But they brought her out, man. And when she saw us, she was okay.
Oh,
But it
wow. Do
was
you
just
remember
something
that,
else.
Sarah?
Absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was laying in the bed when they started breaking all the glass. And that's
Yes.
why I got out of the bed because they was breaking all the glass on top of me. So I
Oh, shit.
got out of the bed and went to the top of the stairs, and then I just saw this big hose coming at me. This
Space.
Yes, it would.
mask,
She's
and
5.
so I'm swinging at them, and
Yeah.
I didn't know why they were there or what was going on, but yeah, I
And
remember
that
all of
fireman
it.
said she's a good fighter for 5. She's a good fighter.
Well, I'm
And
glad you
she
all
socked them
survived.
all upside the head. She was afraid, and naturally so at 5. But I'll
Wow.
never forget it.
Well, I'm glad you all
Angela,
survived it and you're
you can
still here to
probably,
tell the story.
me too. You can probably tell that Sharon is our family historian.
Oh, absolutely. She's full of stories, which is
Yes.
wonderful.
Oh, I have several I've not even spoke about.
Oh, my. Well, we'll
Yeah.
have to have another talk again for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, do you
Yeah.
all have any final words about Sarah that you want to share or want the world to know about her? People have, like I've said, people have latched onto Sarah's story for years and have done films or documentaries about her, some accurately, some not accurately at all. Any final words, though, that you'd want listeners and viewers to know about your grandmother that might be significant, or it might just be something very special to you?
That
Well,
she
for
was
me,
grandmother.
I'll
yeah, she
direct
was
that to
amazing.
any of you. Feel free to speak.
Yeah. She was an
Well
amazing
done.
grandmother. There were a couple of things that she used to do, and it bothered me at the time. But then after I learned, as I got older, why and what. But oh my God, every other Sunday when she come to our house, I don't know what made her do it. Out of me, out of all the other kids, but she always wanted to comb my hair, and
Oh,
she was heavy-handed. And boy, I mean, it felt like eons that she would part my hair straight down the middle and make two fat French braids going all the way to the back of my head, and then she would connect them.
okay.
And I didn't like it because she was heavy-handed. When she brushed, it was like, man, she's gonna pull my scalp off. And she
Wow.
tell me, just sit right here. You're not gonna die. I'm gonna fix your hair. And I'm going, I know that's what I better do. And that's what I did. And when
And
I asked her, can we do a change? Can you fix it another way? And she said, yeah, baby, I'll fix it another way. And I was ecstatic, thinking, I'm happy because she always did it. I mean, this is for months and years that she would come do my hair like that. So when she changed it, she put the part from my left ear, top of my left ear, and went all the way across my head. And the part came all the way around to my right ear. So you know what she did? She made a French braid going this way, and then the back one going over to my right ear, and she would connect them,
oh,
braid them right
jeez.
together. And I'm thinking, when I go look in the mirror, I was so upset. And I told him I don't want her to do my hair no more because she always do the same thing.
That
And
is
my
funny.
dad said, shut up. You should be glad she's here doing your hair.
That's a great story. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
She
That's
was
wonderful.
amazing. She was
Well, and I
amazing.
think that just adds another dimension to Sarah's, not just the icon. You know, we've seen the timid child in the plaid dress looking kind of scared at the camera. We see she was a whole person. She grew to be a
Yeah.
woman. She married, she had children, grandchildren, and she lived a full life. And I think more than anything, it's good that you all can share that. She was, yes, she was a mother, she was a grandmother, she was an aunt,
Yeah.
she was a sister, and I'm sure every part of the family that had relationship with her, they have their versions of their relationships with Sarah. And I think it's all important that we hear all of those stories. So
Exactly. She's just
I would
gone
like to
way too
say that,
soon. Way too soon.
yeah, I would want the world to know that Sarah was strong. She persevered. She endured systemic racism. She endured people hating her for what she had, who they thought she was, the material things that she had, the fact that she could go shopping in a department store where other African Americans could not do that. All the things that people thought she stood for, they hated her for it. And she was trying to fit in here or fit in there. She didn't fit in with the Muskogee Creek Nation. She didn't fit in with other African Americans. She didn't fit in. She was just trying to find her place.
Yeah.
But what I want people to know and understand was she was strong and she was passionate and she did all those things. She lived her life.
Yeah.
And her family was number one for her. That was what was most important for her. And that's what she passed down to our father, our parents, and all of us. That no matter what happens in your life, you can always, always, always count on your family. And that's what she stood for. And that's what she taught us.
that is absolutely beautiful.
Sharing
And
and
I think,
caring. I can
wow.
recall the many nights she would spend the night and sleep on our sofa just to get up and watch cartoons with us on Saturday morning. Now they were a lot smaller, small kids, but I'm sure they still remember some of it. But because what was it? Mighty Mouse,
Yeah, I grew up watching that
Space
too.
Ghost. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're in
yeah,
my era.
yeah.
Well, I just want to give a final word of what I think or what I would like the world to know about my great grandmother. And being the first great granddaughter, it was me and my cousin Brian Kirk, who's not on here. We was the first two grandchildren for the first 12 years with my grandfather Clarence Campbell and my grandmother Bobby Campbell. And what's most important for me, for the world to know and love in history like I do, is I want the world to know someday what she actually went through with the government and the fight that she had with them over her land, and how her land was extracted from her little by little till it was nothing. And the reasons why she had to end up selling the land, if in fact that's the reason, because I don't think we really know, or I don't think we really got to the core of the research to find out exactly what took place. But I do believe we're in the time where we will find out.
Exactly. Well said.
I want to say, and actually Sarah said most of what I was going to say. Some people think, you know, her property and the oil and her lifestyle was her legacy, and that's part of her legacy because that was real. But her family was really her legacy. And although I don't personally have a lot of memories of her, I know her through my dad, and I can tell that she was an amazing mother because we had the best dad on earth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
our dad, like I said, he wanted 10 boys. And although he had 4 girls, he loved his girls just as much as he did his boys. And our father was very present in our lives. And we always joke about who was his favorite because he always made all of us feel like,
Right, like you were the only
like
girl, you
you were,
know?
like you were his favorite, you know, and he was just
Yeah.
that type of dad that he wanted you to know that you could talk to him at any time about anything. And I think what he got from her more than anything is the love of cooking and the love of food. He
Yeah.
was the most elaborate cook ever. And
Yeah.
he would make these huge Christmas and Thanksgiving meals with no help.
Oh, like,
He would make the
Absolutely.
whole shebang in so many desserts, so many pies and
From
cakes,
scratch.
and he
From scratch.
loved it. Yes,
All
all
from
Yeah.
from scratch.
scratch.
He
German
absolutely
chocolate
loved
cake
it.
and yeah,
Sweet potato,
lemon.
lemon meringue
Yeah.
pie, all of it.
Yes,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
my
Yeah.
whole life. My
yes,
whole life.
our whole
I felt
lives.
Yeah.
so blessed.
Yes,
And
Because I
I've
know a
yet
lot
to
of
meet a
kids,
man
a lot
that
of
can
kids,
cook as well as dad.
no.
Even
Wow.
my husband of 40 years, I would tell him sometimes, yeah, that's well, not exactly, but close.
Yeah.
You know that's better. Say, I sure hate it, baby, but you know, you're close. That's all I can tell you. You're close.
Well, one of the things that I've been able to just gather from what you have all shared was that Justice Sarah Rector kept her land. Sarah Campbell, Sarah Crawford kept her family intact as well, and just as strongly. She kept the grip on her land and carried it into her adult life, and she kept her family intact. And I think that it's something that is part of that story. And I'm so happy that you all are sharing it, and I'm hoping to hear more stories. And if there are elders who are still alive who even remember her, maybe you all can find, oh, Miss So-and-so still alive. They went to the same church. You know, anyone who had contact with her, because that's all part of her world. And just as we know she was a mother and a grandmother, and she was a sister and she was an aunt, all of those stories collectively are still part of her legacy that's intact. And I think that that's a tremendous, tremendous lesson to learn. And I have to thank you all for sharing a part of her with me this evening. And I hope we hear from more of you. I also will stay in touch with you. So when I do get back to Oklahoma and get a chance to go and maybe see the Rector Wells, we can all meet there and drink a
Yes.
toast to Miss Sarah by all.
Yeah. That was
So-
something else she didn't do.
That would be
She
great.
didn't smoke cigarettes and she didn't drink liquor. And I would watch her and my dad in the kitchen cooking Thanksgiving and or Christmas dinner. And I'm going like, wow. Now my dad was a smoker and so am I. But at any rate, I never, ever, ever saw that. So she didn't smoke and she didn't drink.
I'm glad you shared that because someday there may be another film about her in her adult life. And you may
Yes.
see her sitting back in a Chase Lounge smoking something. I'm glad you who knew her can say,
Yeah.
no, she never smoked, she never drank.
Nope, not ever.
Keep her legacy intact
I love
as
it.
you all have done. And I just want to thank you all for your time. It has been a real pleasure speaking with Sharon and Sarah and Cheryl and Sharice, and bless you all. And I Miss Sarah Rector Campbell Crawford is up there smiling right now
Yeah.
at the family. So thank you all very much.
No,
And,
thank you.
Thank you for
it has
having us.
been just a real pleasure. So.
Mary McLeod Bethune reaching up and out and down, catching mankind of every creed and class and color that I can, lifting them to the highest heights to which I can send them.
Mary Jane McLeod Bethune was born on July 10, 1875, in Maysville, South Carolina, to former slaves Samuel and Patsy McLeod. She was the 15th of 17 children and the first one to be born free. Mary was born with a veil over her face. At that time, her grandmother declared that she would be special, but her family could never have imagined who she would become. Mary was always a very helpful child and always eager to learn. She began her formal education at the age of 11 at a local Presbyterian church school. Each evening, Mary would come home and share all that she had learned in reading and math with her parents and siblings. At an early age, she would also use her math skills to help black farmers be paid fair wages and not be taken advantage. After graduating, she attended Scotia Seminary, now Barber Scotia College, in North Carolina, and graduated in 1893. She then attended Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, graduating in 1895. Shortly after, she attempted to go to Africa to fulfill her dream of becoming a missionary, but the school's board explained to her that they were no longer allowing black missionaries to go to Africa. Colonization had begun in Africa in 1884, and they feared that recently freed blacks were not welcomed there. In her response to the Missionary Board on December 18, 1894, Dr. Bethune wrote, "Indeed, friends and co-workers for the Lord Jesus Christ, I have not been aware of the fact that you have not been sending out colored missionaries to Africa, or I would not have attempted an exception to your rules." Little did she know that God had a different plan for her life. She then returned to her hometown of Maysville, South Carolina, to teach. Soon after, she began teaching for Lucy Craft Laney at the Haynes Normal and Industrial School in Augusta, Georgia. In 1888, while on a teaching assignment at the Kendall Institute in Sumter, South Carolina, she met and married Albertus Bethune, and to their union, one son, Albert Bethune, was born in 1899. Mary was offered an opportunity to work in Palatka, Florida. It was there that she had several surreal dreams about building her own school in Florida. She knew then that Palatka was only a vessel to get her to Florida, but that she had a greater purpose. It was in Florida that she found her niche. Soon, she heard about Henry Flagler building the Florida East Coast Railroad and it coming through Daytona Beach. She also heard that black day laborers were performing most of the work and that their children would need to be educated. Mary, now 29 years old, decided to move to Daytona Beach to start her school. Dr. Bethune moved from Palatka to her first home in Daytona Beach on 529 Oak Street. where she paid rent of $11 a month. On October 3, 1904, a very determined young black woman, Mary Jane McLeod Bethune, opened the Daytona Literary and Industrial Training School for Negro girls with $1.50, faith in God, and 5 little girls, and her son, Lena, Lucille, and Ruth Warren, Anna Geiger, Celeste Jackson, and Albertus McLeod Bethune, who later changed his name to Albert. Through Dr. Bethune's lifetime, the school underwent several stages of growth and development, and on May 24, 1919, the Daytona Educational and Industrial Institute was changed to Daytona Normal and Industrial Institute. In 1923, the school merged with Cookman Institute of Jacksonville, Florida, founded in 1872, while it also gained the prestigious United Methodist Church affiliation. Although the merger of Bethune's School and Cookman Institute began in 1923, it was not finalized until 1925, when both schools collaborated to become the Daytona Cookman Collegiate Institute. In 1931, the college became accredited by the Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools of the Southern States as a junior college with Class B status, and on April 27, 1931, the school's name was officially changed to Bethune-Cookman College to reflect the leadership of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. When Dr. Bethune came to Daytona Beach to start her school for Negro girls, the power structure tried to discourage her by saying, Negroes didn't need any education to become maids and housekeepers. Dr. Bethune replied, "Let me teach them how to read and write so they can become better maids and housekeepers." She was certainly a strategist and a diplomat. During the early 1900s, Dr. Bethune, while teaching at the Mission School in Palatka, Florida from 1899 to 1903, supplemented her income by selling policies for and becoming the director of the Afro-American Life Insurance Company. That experience made her a firm believer in the value of insurance for everybody and preached its value widely. Aware of her views, one afternoon in 1923, 13 men propositioned Dr. Bethune to join them in incorporating an insurance company. She joined forces with them and became one of the founders and vice presidents of the Central Life Insurance Company of Tampa, Florida. Because of segregation, Daytona Beach was primarily open to whites only. Negroes were only able to visit the beach with a permit and under special circumstances. Dr. Bethune was very disturbed by those restrictions and decided to spend several years searching for the ideal beach location for Negroes. By 1943, she concluded a deal by purchasing 2.5 miles of land for $200,000 north of the Indian River. Bethune-Volusia Beach was incorporated with Dr. Bethune as president. Dr. Bethune experienced great anger and disgust at the lack of medical treatment available to her students and Negroes in the community. Negroes were not allowed to be treated in places reserved for whites. Many times she was told, "We do not take colored people here," or "You will have to go to the back door to be treated." Dr. Bethune would flare into anger and say, "I will never go to your back door." In 1911, Dr. Bethune opened a 2-bed hospital called McLeod Hospital on the campus of Daytona Educational and Industrial Institute. Over the years, the 2 beds became 26. In 1938, Mary McLeod Bethune was appointed by the mayor of the city of Daytona Beach as one of the commissioners of the local housing authority. That appointment was given to her during a time when her community was considered a slum-infested area. Her community asked her to use her influence to get federal funds for a housing project. She agreed to take part in the housing project and decided to call Nathan Strauss, commissioner of the Federal Housing Authority. Unable to reach him, she called the White House and spoke with Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt. She had a long talk with the First Lady concerning funding the housing project. Mrs. Roosevelt had only one question: "How much will you need for the project?" $500,000, Dr. Bethune responded. Action started immediately. On June 25, 1939, ground was broken for the Pine Haven Housing Project. The Bethune Mortuary was established in the 1940s, which was known to be an extremely profitable funeral business. Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune was a close and loyal friend to First Lady Eleanor and President Franklin Roosevelt. At the Southern Conference on Human Welfare in 1938, held in Birmingham, Alabama, Eleanor Roosevelt requested a seat next to Dr. Bethune despite state segregation laws. Roosevelt frequently referred to Dr. Bethune as her closest friend in her age group. Dr. Bethune told Black voters about the work being done on their behalf by the Roosevelt administration and made their concerns known to the Roosevelts. She had unprecedented access to the White House through her relationship with the First Lady. Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune served as advisor to 4 U.S. presidents and held numerous appointments. Calvin Coolidge appointed her to the National Child Welfare Commission in 1928. Herbert Hoover appointed her to the Commission on Home Building and Home Ownership and to a Committee on Child Health in 1930. Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed her special